Hey folks, Julian here again with some technical difficulty information. This one's on me. I moved over to a new recording laptop and just decided to go ahead and start recording on this episode, and didn't really think about calibration and testing my mic and stuff, and I was actually peaking pretty much, well, no, not pretty much. I was peaking the entire episode, and I did the best that I could with fixing it in post, but it's unfortunately pretty rough. The audio quality is poor on this episode. I don't recommend listening to this one with headphones if you can avoid it, but it's a really great show, so hopefully you can hang with the you know, your ears getting blown out, but it's some really good content, so I hope you guys enjoy. We'll get things ironed out for the next episode. Thanks.
This week on NWP, God damn you, Angelo Grant. Hello everyone and welcome to Nerds Without Pants, episode 106.
Now wait a minute.
We cover everything while bearing it all.
Wait, what is happening?
Stage select is about to happen, you son of a bitch.
Yeah. Did I hurt you?
I am Julian, and I'm joined as always by Patrick.
My nostalgia's fighting my other nostalgia.
And Angelo.
I have caused great pain to you. It makes me happy.
Much consternation. I suppose I deserved it after our first stage select, and we'll get to it in a second. Before we do that, I forgot that we got a new iTunes review, and we actually had this a while ago, and I forgot to read it on our first episode back for the year, so I thought I would do that right now. This one comes from Filmcams, and it's titled, An Update! Exclamation mark. In 2012, I said this show was only going to get better with time, and it did. They've been in a groove for a while, but I'd forgotten I left a review years ago, so here's an update. If you like video games, no matter how casual or hardcore you are, that's all in caps, by the way, this is a show that somehow miraculously straddles that line, mainly due to lively conversation and the distinct personalities of the hosts. That actually comes from friend of the show, John Golston, who had reviewed us like way back when we first started, but I really appreciated the new review.
Thanks,
John.
And that's not hyperbole. He legit likes our show. Like, he listens to it every episode and almost always texts me to comment. And yeah, so really appreciate that. And if you want to hear your review read on the show, we do that here. All you have to do is go over to iTunes and leave a review and write something, and I'll read it on the air. And that's how that works. As always, well, not as always, this is actually our first return to our regular format in quite a while, because we had a hiatus and we had specials and like really weird formats and stuff. So we're back to our normal thing, which means we're going to kick things off with Stage Select. And Angelo, this is your Stage Select segment. Why don't you let people know the conundrum that you put us in and take it from there?
I wanted to know your top 3 video game openings. And that could be flexibly whatever you define it as. So, you know, what was the opening moment of a game that just made you go, oh, that's real cool?
Shit, I narrowed it down to top 300 only.
Yeah, like, honestly, like, this was so hard. I could do a top 10 for each console, and it still wouldn't be enough. Like, I mean, just straight up.
And I don't care about, like, technical stuff. Like, I more or less did mine on, like, which ones were the ones that just, like, made me sit there and have my jaw hanging open and going, I need to see that again and again and again and again and again. So that's kind of, like, how I approached it. But just, I wanted this to be flexible. Tell me why you liked it and, you know, that kind of thing.
Well, and we actually got more feedback on this one from listeners than any other Stage Select topic, so you did something right.
I caused a lot of pain is what I did.
Yeah, you did. I've been thinking about this for 2 weeks straight, and it wasn't until yesterday that I finally finalized them, and even now I'm waffling. I'm thinking about, I'm like, I don't know, they're so, but I've got to lock it in. Fortunately, like, I can talk about a bunch of the ones I wanted to because listeners, so that's awesome. But, Angelo, where do you want to start?
What do you mean, like, with who?
Yeah, like, do you want to kick it off? Like,
No, why don't you start?
You know.
Go ahead.
You want me to start?
Yeah,
okay. All right. Well, you're the host of this segment, but I'll go. So my number 3. I mean, I guess these are ranked. I mean, honestly, like, it was hard because the way I approached this wasn't necessarily like these are my best 3 intros ever. Because that could change from a minute to minute basis. Oh yeah. I ended up picking things that were either important to me personally or things that I liked showing people over and over and over. And that's what this first one is. My number 3 pick is Brutal Legend.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if
That's
like
a great intro.
it's an awesome intro. I guess, I don't know if you want us to, like, how much detail you want us to go into. I want to describe at least a little bit. So, first of all, Brutal Legend starts with, like, a live action thing of Jack Black, like, bringing you into a record store. He's telling you about this album. And so he finds the album and it's Brutal Legend, and that's, like, the title screen. So that right alone is just, like, kind of badass. But the actual intro is that perfect, Double Fine blend of, like, comedic timing and animation and voice acting, you know, like the way that, Eddie Briggs is talking about what the roadie does. And it's all, like, super serious about, if he does his job well enough, you never even see him, you know, and it's like, just like this really cool, super serious thing. But then when he ends up in the universe of Brutal Legend and he, you know, like, he picks up his weapon for the first time and, you know, they introduce the enemies and then he like gets his guitar and, like, kills them with the electricity and he does this little, like, head bob. Like, it's just very subtle and it's just so funny. And, like, I've shown people that intro and I've watched it multiple times. Like, that game itself has a lot of problems, but I keep going back to it for terms of storyline and cutscenes, and I've rewatched cutscenes from that game over and over. But the intro is just hot fire.
Also, the way it let you, like, set up the options of the game, it's like, you know, it's got this whole thing where it's like these people are about to die, and it goes, by the way, every once in a while this game's gonna get real violent. You want to see it or not? Yeah. Or like what was the other one where, like, he was about to start swearing at somebody, and it's like you can either hear the profanity or nah, man, bleeps are funny.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually saw the censored version of it before we started recording, and, you know, like, in the uncensored version with the violence, like, the pop punk band that he's roadieing for, like, their heads straight up explode. Yep. Like, you know, Indiana Jones style. But then in the censored version, like, they just get knocked down. It's just like, that's so weak. I don't know why you would play it that way. You basically turn it into a T-rated game.
I actually went through and turned the bleeps on because I thought it was actually funnier with the bleeps.
I think so too. That almost got me to play the whole game, but at that point, like, I was really anti Jack Black for some reason. Now I've come around on him, but I did research on the Reddit like feed where people were talking about all their favorite intros, and like, it was probably half a page down when someone just goes "Brutal Legend!" ! And then it's like 10 or 20 different replies that are all "Brutal Legend!" Yeah, like, no one even explains it.
I'm glad that people remember, because I feel that game's kind of been lost to time, with somewhat good reason, because, like, that game was not. You want to talk about No Man's Sky? That game is not what I was promised or what I expected it to be. Like, I was not expecting a, you know, half-assed, like, real-time strategy game. I was expecting, like, Zelda with metal, and that's not what I got.
Yeah.
Still fine. I just, you know, I would have enjoyed it a lot more if they'd gone further down the Zelda road and not whatever weird strategy route they went, because that stuff, no thank you.
Cool. I think I'm going to go next, and we'll save Patrick for last. Because I think mine, with the exception of this one, are fairly predictable.
Okay.
But so my number 3 has 3 right in the title. And it is an entry level of a game. It's a shoot 'em up. And it's funny because it's part of a series, you know, because it has 3 in it. And the game that was before it on the same system had, like, crippling slowdown and didn't really look that good. And then this thing literally took every trick the Super Nintendo had and like shoved it in your face. Like it had polygons in there and it worked really well. And it wasn't an FX chip game either.
Half-Life 3?
Nope. No. Super Nintendo.
I know.
It was R-Type 3.
Oh.
Oh, okay. I was like, at first I thought it was like Gradius 3. I was like, wait, you said 2 on the same system. I can't even think. Okay.
If you've never seen the first level for R-Type 3, it is insane. It is so cool. Like, it actually starts off with you like first person in your ship, and you're picking like your ship type and you're picking your force type, and then it actually zooms out of your ship. Like it starts like on this little spark that's like your engine, and then layers and layers and layers of like mode 7 come out, and then it's your ship that's scaled all the way in. And then you go through the stage and like the backgrounds are really cool, and then you start like ripping through this base, and it's an outline, and these mechs are swooping in from the background to fight you. And the last one, like, you're just shooting it, and it won't die. And it's literally in front of you shooting you, and it looks, this animation only happens once in the whole game. It looks over its back shoulder, starts to turn around, and just slams right into the wall and explodes. It's such a cool thing. Like, there's one part where you're spinning, like, they just put, like, a giant polygon in there because they could. Like, you're just going in front of this huge, like, spinning drive, like, octagonal drive shaft.
Man, I love the way that you described it, but see, where I lost you was when you said you go through the stage, because what happens with me is you die repeatedly and a bunch of bullets come right at you and then you die again.
Because it's hard. Yeah.
Patrick's only seen the first 15 seconds of that game.
Go watch a YouTube video of that, because it's one of those ones that you walk away going, a Super Nintendo could do that without an FX chip? Really? That's pretty cool. So,
Man, and I love me some Mode 7, man. Like that, honestly, that stuff is not, I think it's aged awesomely. Like, I still look at, like, Super Nintendo Mode 7 and, like, that looks really freaking sweet. Like, it doesn't look silly or like, dated to me. I'm like, that's a really impressive feat right there.
I love scaling sprites. If you want to see another shooter with great scaling sprites, and this didn't have as good of a first level, I'm just mentioning it, you should check out Ray Force. Not Ray Storm, Ray Force. Like, it does, it's all scaling sprites. It's amazing. So...
And if you want to see an action game with some really cool scaling sprites, this late Super Nintendo era, Skyblazer.
Oh, yeah.
They do some really interesting stuff with like the way that they enlarge enemies and stuff, and it looks so smooth because that was like years after the Super Nintendo came out. So that it's so slick, and I feel like nobody knows about Skyblazer, but it's a great platformer.
I have seen that. I have not played it. I have just seen videos of it on YouTube. I would probably like it.
Yeah, I think you would. It's from the same team that did the Hook Super Nintendo game, like based on the movie, and that game is awesome. Like the Hook video game is fan-freaking-tastic.
Really?
Yes. It's easy as hell, but like it's got some of the best animation I've seen like on the Super Nintendo. Like when you jump, like I swear it's like 30 frames of animation or something. Like he does this like really intricate flip, and when he's floating, like his tunic is like swaying in the breeze, and like the sprites are just super detailed. It's some quality stuff.
Nice.
There's so many good
Patrick now.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's so many different things on YouTube I've been watching recently for like video game movies, and not only does it show me a lot of stuff that I don't see normally, but it gives you like a lot of ideas for new mechanics in Overwatch or something like that. Where I can bring anything back to Overwatch now, but like I really would recommend any game that you're playing to watch a video of it before you get back into it if you're having any trouble at all, because like, man, I went up 500 points after I watched like a couple videos and stopped talking to people and that, and I know that if I watch like R-Type 3, I'll actually be able to beat the first level or something. Maybe.
Yeah, those games are more, they call them the thinking man shooter. I don't know how much, there's Twitch in there for sure, absolutely, but a lot of it is sort of puzzle solving. Like when you get to this section, where do you put the force on your ship? You know, and what kind of a approach do you take to getting through this path? It is very fun to figure out, but, you know, watching a video will help a lot if you're stuck, too.
Yeah, it gives you a good idea of what they intended in the first place, and then you could take it from there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So my number 3 is Chrono Trigger, and it's like the one from PlayStation 1 where they redid the opening cinematic, so it's like really anime style, and like that was the first time that I played it. It was one of my first RPGs, like in the Final Fantasy Chronicles 2 set. But like first of all, that the cinematic is like one of the most epic that I've seen. It's like it gives you like all the fanboy, like it's you get to see every character like turn and look at you, and you see, well, for me, I saw Frog for the first time pull that sword, and I was like hooked, and I knew I was going to play it to the end. But not only for all of mine, I thought like there are good cinematics, there are good intro levels. Now, what's a good combination of the two? And I feel like that also has the first, like, it has not the first, but it has a really good introduction, like with the whole fair and everything. And the start of the game also, it can be like hacked basically. Like you can get all the way to the end of the game really quick after you beat it. And there's like a lot of like intricate ideas that I didn't really see too much in other games at the time, that I felt like I needed a spot, not only for the nostalgia and the cinematic, but also like the way the beginning of the game is, you can play it in different ways based on like how much you've already played the game and how like leveled your characters are and stuff like that. I love everything about that game. Is watching the intro, I was like taken back to like my childhood. And it also has, you know, the PlayStation 1 startup, which I think it influenced me as well. But that is one of my favorite games of all time, one of the best cinematics of all time, and I think one of the best introductory levels with that festival.
Yeah. Still the best Frog in the history of video games. As far as
He's the best RPG character in the history of RPGs. Yeah, he's my favorite. So if we ever do that, if we ever do that topic, the cat's out of the bag on my number one.
Yeah,
but
I think we did something. It was like, what was your ultimate RPG party? And I think we all had Frog in it or something like that.
He's just fantastic, and then his theme song is just amazing. But no, Patrick, like that's a great choice, because I'd say like for me, I'd call the intro like all the way up until maybe you go back in time to the Middle Ages, like that whole segment, and like the fact that the stuff that you do while you're in the fair comes back to bite you later on during the trial, like depending, like if you go to like grab the necklace before you go talk to Marley, like they're like, oh, you just wanted the necklace, you know. It's like, what? No, I was going to hand it to her, you know, like little things like that is so cool. And I mean, I get verklempt like when that game starts, like every time, and a lot of it is the nostalgia. I just watched it not too long ago, and just like the sound effects and the music and the meow of the cat. Like I'm starting to get a little emotional right now just talking about it, because like I can see it so vividly. I got like, I think like 9 of the 10, or I think it was 12 endings. I think I got like 9 of them. Like I got almost all of them. Like I played that game backwards and forwards. It's amazing.
One of the things I remember reading in Nintendo Power was that they took a different approach with the art in that game, where rather than drawing the art like they typically do, they actually painted it. And I think like you really see that.
Yeah, especially the overworld.
Yep, that overworld, even like, you know, like the booths in the Millennial Fair, how they kind of have like they have strokes to them. I don't know how else to explain it. And just the way the color sort of flows across everything. The way the balloons look, everything has like a pastel sort of look to it, like almost they use watercolors in spots.
Yeah.
Really cool.
Yeah, that's why I was able to pop so much more than like any other RPG on that system, I feel like. I mean, I haven't played them all, and I know that your favorite is not that one, but
I mean, it's a fantastic game, like, and you know, it was one of the last big RPGs on the Super Nintendo, and it shows. Like, if we're talking like presentation wise, like, I'd probably put it at number 1. Yeah. Because the sprites are so big and well animated, and yeah, I didn't realize about the painting, but that totally makes sense, because like I remember like getting to it's not Zeal, because is it Zeal? Like the magic area?
Yeah, that's Zeal, like the crazy tech city or whatever it is.
Yeah, it's just so gorgeous, you know, and I like like very, very nice.
But what you really hit on was like the other actions at the beginning of the game coming back to haunt you, and that's like the biggest, I think, mark of a great introduction, and that's something that you'll see next. But it's what separated me from like all. I have like all these question marks, like just really quickly: Ocarina, Half-Life 2, Portal 2. The Genesis in general, when it goes Sega, like War.
I don't think that's what Angelo meant.
I know,
but I get where you're coming from.
But like there's Warhammer 40K or Civ 4. All those are great intros, but then like they don't really relate to the beginning of the game. And in this case, like the beginning of the game's great, the cinematic's great. They both come together in one, and it had to be there.
Yeah. And real quick, Patrick, going back to the PlayStation boot up, I just watched the Ratchet and Clank movie today, which is not a very good movie at all. But one of the best little Easter eggs was when Quark puts this like USB drive into a thing to sabotage it, and the first thing that comes up is, and then he cuts it off real quick, and I was like, okay, that was clever.
Well
I like that.
Damn. See, I wanted to watch that game or watch that movie based on the game, based on the movie, based on the game so bad. But like, I heard it wasn't that good. And like, I was so mad that last year Insomniac didn't make it like the year of Ratchet and Clank. I thought he was going to be elevated to like Mario levels, and it ended up just being forgotten with like the sands of time.
Yeah, the movie felt like an hour and a half long Ratchet and Clank cutscene. And it's not that Ratchet and Clank has bad cutscenes. It's just I don't want them for an hour and a half straight. Mm-hmm. Like I think they're best when they're punctuated by the gameplay. Yeah, but it had a couple moments. I think my favorite bit was where they used the Wilhelm scream, and then there's a person behind him that yells out Wilhelm, and I was like, okay. Nice. That's good. That's like a very specific like level of geek joke that like. That's really good stuff.
Right, but that's also what I would totally expect their humor to be like in that movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and yeah. And you know, and for better or for worse, like I think it's kind of cool that they use the original voice actors from the game, which I wasn't expecting, but I don't know, it ended up losing a little bit of pizzazz in the process. I don't know, like maybe those voices work really well for like a 3-minute long cutscene at a time, but not for doing movie levels of dialogue. That's how I saw it. Anyway, we're getting far afield.
Yeah.
Do you want me to, I guess it's my turn again. Okay. So we're going to get, this is going to be a theme from me for this whole segment, is me getting like kind of verklempt and emotional and almost crying. This next one, I had to put a Final Fantasy game on my list, right? Like, and I almost didn't. And this one is kind of a weird one because if you played this on certain systems, you never saw it, which is a travesty. But it's Final Fantasy XI's intro, the CG intro. If you played it on the Xbox 360, it's not in the game. It's a real bummer. I think if you play it on the PC, you have to elect... No, I'm sorry. It does fire up automatically. But the 360, it's just not there. And like so many people played that game on the 360. And it's a beautiful like story of tragedy and war and death, but also hope and camaraderie and like I'm actually starting to cry a little bit because like when I see that intro, it's like not only is it like just this really cool intro, it's like one of the best looking Final Fantasy intros. But it also represents like all of those memories that I have from those hundreds of hours in that game with people from all over the world that I never met in real life, but, made a real connection with. And the intro like totally encapsulates that. And it's just really cool. And the music, it's if you go to Final Fantasy Distant Worlds, that's the Final Fantasy XI piece that they play. Sometimes you'll get lucky and they'll also play Ronfar, which is my favorite piece of Final Fantasy XI music. But the intro music is like the one that they always do, because I think that's like Uematsu. Like he has his favorites of like his music. Like you can tell, like whenever you see like compilation albums, they're like the same music kind of pops up, and that's definitely one of them. So if you haven't seen it, I recommend checking it out, because like I said, if you played that game on the 360, you probably never saw it. And even if you played it on the PS2, like you probably watched it once and then never saw it again. So it's something really special.
Yeah, I played it on 360 and I don't think I saw it. So I might have to
it's basically like, I guess I didn't really describe it. So like it centers around like this brother and sister. And it's during the Crystal War, which, so like you see this huge invasion of beastmen, orcs, and, behemoths and war machines and stuff assaulting the city. And like the Tarus are like making these giant like ice spells to like take out like 10 and 20 troops at a time. The behemoths look massive. They actually can like look over the castle walls. And this brother and sister are running in the catacombs of this castle, and they're running from orcs. And the sister boosts up the little brother, and then she gets killed and he runs away. And then it cuts to, like 20 years later, he's a grown man and he's like kind of doing the same little thing with his hands that he did as a kid, like basically trying to like hold the city in his fingers, because he's like real far away. But then he's joined by like 40 different people, of all different races and job types and stuff. And it's awesome. It's just a really cool intro.
I will have to look that up. It sounds neat. So I mentioned before that I didn't have a Dreamcast, but that doesn't mean that like in 2001 when I was at college, I was not abusing the T1 internet connection I had there to watch as many videos as possible of video game introductions. And this one was one that I actually spent time and like downloaded and put on my computer. And I was like, guys need to see this. Get over here and watch this. Video games are awesome. Like that kind of thing. And from what I hear, the game actually wasn't that good. But man, that intro was Resident Evil Code Veronica.
Oh!
Yes.
How did I forget that one? We used to watch that at Game Fellas on a loop.
So good.
What happens in it?
Yeah. It's like Die Hard, but with a chick. It's awesome. They stole some of the choreography from that cutscene to put into the Resident Evil movies.
Yeah.
I would say, if they didn't, stole is the wrong word. Clearly they're paying homage to it because it's a Resident Evil movie aping from a Resident Evil game. Like, that was in there for the fans.
And I actually did geek out of that part of that movie.
Yeah.
I think it was Resident Evil 2, which is like in my opinion, the worst of the movies. But I liked that part.
Yep. So the kind of like the apex is she's doing all this stuff. She's like running through a building. There's a helicopter trying to shoot her through the glass. All sorts of crazy stuff's going on. She ends up stumbling into this room full of soldiers, and they all just have their guns pointed at her. And she puts her hands up like this with the gun in it, drops the gun, and there's like a beat where like it kind of like shows like a barrels behind these guys, and then as the gun's falling, she quick like dives to the floor, grabs the gun, shoots the barrel, blows them all up.
Yeah.
I am not describing it nearly as cool as it looks. All
done in slow motion. It's really fantastic.
It's so good. It was perfectly choreographed. So
I will say, like, just to defend it, like at the time, Code Veronica was fantastic. It was like a really great throwback to like Resident Evil 1 in the sense of like they kind of brought the survival horror aspect kind of back to it. It just hasn't aged well. Like, the voice acting is bad, but I mean, the voice acting in all the games is bad. I mean, I think the voice acting in 4 is bad, and that's still one of the best ones. But yeah, like I think, going back and playing it now, it doesn't hold up as well as like the 1 remake and Resident Evil 4 does. And people love Resident Evil 2, so, but at the time, like, that was like a reason to buy a Dreamcast, in my opinion. Like, I sold systems based on that game.
I believe it. And also the way it ended, too, where like you were in that jail cell and you lit up your lighter and then it zoomed out and just seamlessly went to gameplay.
Yeah.
Like, you didn't see, in so many other games, like you saw that rough cut between like the cinematic and you taking control of the character, and you did not see it in this one. You probably could see it now, but I couldn't see it then.
Yeah.
It was really pretty sweet.
As long as we're talking about like selling systems based on Resident Evil games, I'm pretty sure like VR is selling lots of systems based on this new Resident Evil 7. I mean, at least my friends keep talking about how absolutely terrified they are of it, and they can't even play it at night. And like some of them are like, 2 of them are going, yeah, I need to take off work so I could play this during the day because it seems like a great day to play Resident Evil, and I'm sure as shit not going to play it tonight because it's too scary.
I don't know if VR is going to sell Resident Evil so much as Resident Evil is going to sell VR.
Yeah.
I think it might be the other way around. But yeah, I am hearing that from people, that horror games are like what is finally making this click. So it's kind of...
I still need to try that demo with my VR. I took my PSVR to Colorado to show my friends, and I haven't hooked it back up since I got home because it's so much stuff to hook up. It's just like there's so many wires everywhere. Also, I'm not jazzed about what I've seen of Resident Evil 7, so I'm not like chomping at the bit to try it. But we talked about it last episode.
Right. So
Patrick's turn.
All right. So my number 2 is along the same lines as my number 3. It's a really good memory, and I think it delves into the story a lot more than you realize at the time. But like, you don't even really know when you start controlling it because you're in this plane crash, and all of a sudden you're like in the water, and it's the best water you've ever seen. But as soon as you get up out of the water, it's just like, it's seamless, just like taking the Switch out of its console or something like that. And then, like, I was sitting there for like 5 minutes before I realized, it's time for me to go now. And I have to go into, what is this? It's like a big lighthouse. Rapture. What's inside Rapture? No gods? No, only men? Who is this guy, Andrew Ryan? And like from there, it was just everything I loved about like underwater scary games. Like, I didn't want to play through it because it was so terrifying at points, but like, you make it, and I made all the right choices in the end. But then like when you get to a certain point and there's like this cinematic that brings everything back to the beginning, and you thought you had your own free will, but you realize like that you've been asked kindly to do things the whole time. It was just like the first time that I got mind fucked in a game so much that I was like, yes, if I could hug you right now, developers, I would. And it was like the first game that I really played that showed off the PC that I made too. It had great visuals at the time, and even looking back at it, like, they aged pretty well. They have really good lighting effects in the sea and stuff like that at the beginning. So it was like, it didn't matter that it was, 10 to 15 years old or whatever it is. It just, it looked great again. And I was so happy that I researched it enough to like look through it. And I was like, this has to be in my top 3 because it's so important to the whole story, and you don't even realize it until it's already over.
Yeah. You could write a college thesis on all the different things, all the different like heavy topics that they sort of, I don't know how successfully they discuss them in BioShock, but they at least...
Oh, thank you for saying the name.
Yeah, sorry. Oh. Did you not say
people are listening, they're like, whoa. No, he didn't. Oh. We all knew what he was talking about, right. But there's probably someone listening that hasn't played it. There's like that one person.
I am sorry.
Yeah, my bad.
Sorry, not me. But like, it's the human condition, it talks about market, it talks about, free will. You could just there's like a dozen topics that it approaches.
Utopia.
Yeah, like, does utopia happen? Does it work? What's the role of religion in all this? Like, and it all does it. Sometimes it's a little heavy-handed, and sometimes it's not. Sometimes it doesn't even draw a conclusion. It just leaves you with like, okay, think about this. Goodbye, and that's kind of it.
Yeah,
that game wasn't afraid to go places, and that was really cool. And it wasn't afraid to be subtle or direct.
And more than any game at the time, it was an experience, which is why I kind of started to describe it that way, because it's really like you're just thrown into it, and it's all an opening cinematic, and yet it's not an opening cinematic at all, because you are really playing most of it. But the part where you're crashing the plane and your memories and the photos and stuff like that is just so haunting. Chilling.
And aside from the magical science aspect of it, and the improbability of building a city under the ocean, isolating humanity and having them like, go completely berserk because, we don't need an authoritarian, we don't need any sort of authority and that sort of thing. Not only plausible, highly probable, as history will show you again and again and again. So yeah, I dig that game.
Yeah, and Patrick, you're right. I'm glad that you picked it. I mean, I actually saw somebody in the comments pick it because honestly, if we're saying like this, actually, I think is like the best intro in video games, or at least like it's the one that I've shown people the most times. Because like I said on the show, like before, when the demo of BioShock came out back on the Xbox 360, every person that came to my apartment had to play that. Like, I was like, here's a controller, just do this. And every single person, when they would come up out of the water, would just like sit there watching the flames on the water and be like, oh wait, I can play now, because like there's no seam. It it's all in engine, and there's not that shift of like, okay, now it's like, usually there's like kind of like a frame ratey thing that changes, but there's nothing like that. It just looks completely fluid. And yeah, like I'd say for that one, like to me, the intro is like all the way up until you exit the bathysphere. I would call that the intro, you know, and like, so when you see like the bathysphere like coming up over the ridge and you see Rapture for the first time, like it's just so perfect.
You give me goosebumps.
And then Angelo like talking about like stuff to think about. Like there's one line, I don't know if I ever said it on the show, maybe I did because I recently replayed it, but like there's that one line that Fontaine says where he says you know, they wanted to build a utopia, you know, but everybody forgets that there's somebody that has to clean the toilets. And I've always remembered that because like it like, yeah, like, you know, it's all great to think like, oh, we're all going to be like super educated and like we're all going to have great jobs, and it's like someone's got to clean the toilets, someone's got to flip the burgers. Like that's always going to be the case.
And then,
so
you know, you go to the loading docks, and those are the people that seem the most broken. Like they're the most desperate. And I know we're not reviewing BioShock right now, but my one complaint about that game is how quickly it kind of becomes abstracted. I very quickly started not to look at the splicers as human beings, only enemies. And the game didn't really successfully correct that at any point.
Right.
You had to actually like willfully kind of, okay, these are people. You know, they've been like, they're being controlled by pheromones that are being pushed through the vents. Like that's the horror aspect of this game, that these are people that, you know, they're just making go nuts because they think there's some sort of benefit to that. I mean, that game is so screwed up when you really think about it. Anyway, I think we're good on BioShock.
Yeah.
You could talk for another hour on that game. Let's go back to Julian.
It's not for me, you understand. From what I have been reading, the scout means needed to stimulate his follicle.
All right. I think my number one is probably, I'd be surprised if it wasn't also Patrick's number one. And if it's not, I'll be super surprised. I picked this one because it actually hits pretty close to home, like literally. But it's The Last of Us. Because the beginning of that game literally takes place in Austin. Now, it's a weird version of Austin. It's kind of Austin blended with East Texas in a weird way, because like there's no small town like on the outskirts of Austin that looks the way that the town you're in at the beginning of Last of Us does. But like, you know, they talk about like getting on I-71. That's where I live right now, guys. Like, you know, so it hits like super close to home as far as like, holy shit, like if the shit goes down, yeah, I-35 is going to be completely chaotic. And I mean, that's what you see. Like the road to get on south towards San Antonio is just like backed up. And there's just something about that just hits really close. And then, I mean, you know, I'm very critical of Naughty Dog's video games, but when you talk about facial animations and motion capture and voice performance and direction, you know, they're some of the top in the game. And even though it's a very small bit of time, you know, Joel's relationship with his daughter is just so well defined, and it's like, okay, you can totally you can extrapolate their entire daily relationship just from about like 3 minutes that they're together. Like that's incredible. You know, and it's heart-wrenching, and it's intense, and yeah, it puts you through the ringer in 15 minutes. It's sort of like the beginning of Up in the same way, where it's just like, I just went on an emotional roller coaster and I need a minute.
Yeah, I didn't even think of that one. I thought of all these Naughty Dog intros, and I of course didn't think of that one. The first one that came to mind was Uncharted 2 for me, with like the winter sequence and everything like that. It was, and in media res and all like the great storytelling aspects. But now I'm thinking like, yeah, damn, like the overgrowth and everything in The Last of Us, and all the way up through when your friend is it Sam is his name, the guy that Joel's good friends with, all the way.
Oh yeah, that shows up to help him out.
Yeah, all the way through what happens with him, I think, is basically the intro for me. But it was just like a tour de force as far as emotions are concerned, and something that definitely deserves to be up there. And maybe I'm even like rethinking my top 5 or so, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I more or less stuck with stuff that like blew me away. And I mean, that was impressive on another level, I guess. I think I approached mine from a little more of a technical aspect. Like, what was the thing that I always point? Look at video games, guys, like that kind of thing.
I mean, I think Last of Us hits that so hard too.
It does. But I mean, more from a technical.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you're right. You could go there for sure.
I think a lot of it is consistently great throughout the whole game too. Like, I don't know if like the intro necessarily is the best part for me, or versus like when you're like in the school and there's all the clickers that you have to like just sneak around. I think those were like great sneaking mechanics for an action game. And if there weren't so many like push boxes here puzzles, I would. I just can't put so many Naughty Dog things in the top 3 anymore. I'm too big of a fanboy.
Yeah, I mean, like for me, Angelo, like I think Last of Us blends like it's very technical, it's graphically gorgeous, again the acting stuff, but then the gameplay that mixes in with it like seamlessly, like you know all of that stuff. Like once your car gets hit and you're on foot, like you know you're controlling all of that, but like then it cuts back into like scripted cutscene. And then back into gameplay like so well, and then just like boom, you know, his daughter dies, and then The Last of Us, and it's like, oh,
Yeah.
yeah. That was rough.
yeah. And I'm not even a parent, but I can appreciate that.
Yeah.
I'm sure, like I remember hearing that like you know people who were like parents like had a real hard time playing The Last of Us.
Yeah, because I thought, you know, I was like, oh, yeah, I'm going to have a partner and everything. I thought that was it. And then, no, whoa.
Let's see here. It's my turn.
Yes.
Damn, wait, Julian, number 1 on Naughty Dog. Oh, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, why not?
I mean, there were. I had a laundry list of games, and like this could shift, like so many times just as we're talking. Because like I was so close to putting Dead Space 2 in there because I think that's one of the most like jaw-dropping things to happen like in a game. Like the guy comes to rescue you, and then his face explodes as he turns into a necromorph right in front of your eyes, and you're in a straitjacket. You can't do anything. Like you know, like that's so effective. But yeah, I was just doing a bunch of research, and I was like, you know what? Let me look at Last of Us. And then I looked at it again. I was like, I'd forgotten just because like I played that game and then never, you know, did anything with it again. But looking at it again, I was like, oh yeah, that hits on so many different levels. And then again, for me personally, like the fact that it's in my backyard, there's just something very specific. Like, you know, like Patrick, you live in Chicago. Angelo, you live close enough to New York City where you see like your area like represented in media often enough to where it probably loses impact, but it's like, this is freaking Austin, Texas it starts in. This is weird. Yeah. Because like nothing starts in Austin.
But I'm with you. Like if it hits like exactly like where I grew up, like the area where I grew up, there's so many different neighborhoods in Chicago. You could have a game in Chicago that doesn't even get 50 blocks from like where I live, but there's like, you know, the TV show Shameless, which is like 20 blocks away from where I grew up, and I knew people who like lived in those kind of houses – I went past that area a lot, you know, or like, you know, I live like 2 neighborhoods away from the back of the yards like growing up, and there was a lot of overflow into my area that was similar to that, or like cops trying to keep people from that area out of my area, and like just neighborhood violence. But stuff like that will really hit close to home if they show me something that actually looks similar to like what I grew up in. But like anything else besides like small homes like that, all of a sudden I won't feel like, you know, it's my home anymore. Like in the suburbs, like Chicago, they'll say downtown, or, you know, Watch Dogs didn't even put like the great things downtown in. So it was like, this is Chicago, but it's not. Like it doesn't have the bean. It doesn't have the architecture that Picasso made or like anything like that. I mean, it can be okay and it's fun to say Chicago, but like sometimes you just gotta like make up a fictional area if you're Watch Dogs instead of like trying. Like they could have just said it was like a fictional city and that would have been better, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. There isn't anything super local to me that I don't think is ever going to get represented. Like I'm just because I'm like an hour away from the capital and I'm several hours away from New York City. Like, when I see stuff that takes place in New York City, I'm like, oh, that's cool, but it's not really my home,
Right.
I think it's my turn.
Yeah, what's your
It
number
is.
one?
I'm very curious.
I wish I had something a little more surprising than this, but for its time, because it doesn't hold up as well as my other picks. I think if you went and watched the Code Veronica one, or even the R-Type 3 one right now, it would still kind of blow your mind. But this one, there have been so many games that came out after it that did this significantly better. The thing is, this one did it first. So the impact, or at least for me, the impact was super high. Final Fantasy VII.
Okay. Yeah.
I like it.
But that is the...
Yeah.
I like that.
I expect somebody else has probably picked that as well. Because somebody turned on their PlayStation like me, didn't know exactly what they were going to get into because, I played Final Fantasy games before. What is happening? Like that kind of thing. And it's like, oh, that train just stopped and I just hopped off of it. That is incredible. That kind of thing because that's how the game
Exactly.
starts.
And like
And it doesn't stop.
that was like the first RPG I played, so I mean it totally is stuck in my mind as like the defining moment almost where I like fell in love with video games besides maybe like at a certain point in Ocarina of Time or something like that. But like I didn't realize a game could be like that when you get off that train or when you see Ares in the broken church and there's like the flowers and then it just goes out the top and you see the sunlight, or like when you see the Shinra mansion or whatever, like whatever you call it, from like the bottom of the Buster Sword. Like there's all these like images that are stuck in my mind from how many years ago was that? 15 years ago, and I haven't played it since.
Yeah.
Like,
Or like
Nope, sorry. Since you played it, it just celebrated its 20th anniversary. Like when they did the Square Enix 30th anniversary Final Fantasy kickoff, it was also the 20th anniversary of Final Fantasy VII in Japan. So, like, that's crazy. But no, like actually, I don't think anybody picked Final Fantasy VII, Angelo, and I'm kind of surprised. But I think maybe because it's Final Fantasy VII, and I think it's starting to get a little bit of backlash over the years. Like I was backlashing against it like when Final Fantasy IX came out, because like the people who started with 7 hated 9 so much, and I was like sitting at the store just banging my head against the counter saying, no, you don't understand, this is actually what Final Fantasy is. but no, like the music, like the way that like the music starts up on 7 and it swells when you pull out to show Midgar, and like the logo comes up, and like that whole thing, and honestly, like when they do the remake, even though it's going to look like way better, I don't think they can make that as cool, just because like the idea of, here's CG, but now here's my polygonal like, overworld character coming down and like kicking this guy, and now, like here we go. Like that's not going to be there in the game, because it's going to be like the same, whatever you see in the cutscenes is going to be what your character looks like all the time. So there's not that like delineation between that. Like it's not going to have the same effect, I don't think. Yeah, I could be wrong, but
even the
I
battle,
don't think so.
We were so used to like static cameras and sprites, but here you're in a a fight with somebody, and it's a 3D arena, and the camera moves. It's dynamic. It comes down. It moves around. You know, it zooms in on you when you run and slash somebody with your sword. I'm like, this is incredible. You know, but all
And
that
Cloud looks like he's doing a Dragon Ball Z fireball move when he does magic. It's awesome.
Yeah, it is awesome.
I mean, I think this is still the intro, but when you first see Sephiroth in the motorcycle with like the flames everywhere, or maybe that's
That's way later.
That's way later.
But that is
Yeah.
a cool cutscene.
okay.
Yeah, that's arguably the best cutscene.
I would, you know what other one got me too, and it's kind of weird. It's like when the weapons showed up, there was a few cutscenes involving them, and I'm like, oh man, this thing's just gonna like, you know, go over here and breathe fire on this thing. What's that gonna do? And then like it opened up its mouth, and like a muzzle comes out and freaking lasers.
You know, I have one simple request, and that is to have sharks with frickin' laser beams attached to their heads.
And I'm like, this is insanity, and I absolutely love it. There's a crazy dragon thing that shoots lasers, and then you get to kill it.
You know, as much as I really love your number one game, Angelo, I can't stop talking. I need to talk about my number one game because it reminds me so much of your number one game. And I'm thinking of like when you first turn on that PlayStation 1, it's got the same sound when you're like, like I stayed home just to hear that sound and play through this entire game because my number one game is Final Fantasy VII.
There you go.
Okay.
Nice.
Oh man, it's just the best intro.
It is. Just for the time when it came out.
I'm getting chills down my spine right now. My heart's racing faster just because, like, I can close my mind and I can remember a certain day that I stayed home from school after, like, I first played it the day before. And, like, my mom was like, I know you're not really sick, but I could tell how much this has changed you. Like, you're sick for this game.
There was a thing where, so I was in, like, a band, and it was all, like, school sanctions and everything, but there was a gap between when we got out of school and when we started practicing, like an hour-long gap. And I straight up snuck my PlayStation in my bag and found a TV in the basement and hooked everything up just to play for like a half an hour.
Man.
Yeah, that game was something else.
Just a cross-dress.
I had to show my friend the summons. It's like, look what I can do. It was like flipping like the entire planet on somebody's face. Oh, no, wait, that was Titan, but whatever. You know what I mean? They're all
Yeah.
great.
Oh man, yeah.
But can we all agree that Bahamut Neo is the best one? Not Zero, Neo,
All right,
the second one.
What game was that?
That's the Red Dragon and 7. The Red Dragon that levitates like the piece of rock and then like disintegrates the rock and the enemy with a giant like fireball. That is my favorite
That is
one.
very good.
And, you know, see, that being my first Final Fantasy, I was like, yes, all these dragons. I love summoning these dragons. And, like, that's one thing that, like, really nothing itches me for anymore. It's funny that Scalebound got canceled, but, like, we need more games where you just, like, get to summon dragons or become dragons or fly on dragons. Like, and even Dragon Age doesn't have enough dragons.
Bring back Breath of Fire.
Yeah.
Bring back Drakon the Ancient Gate.
Also that.
Or Dragon
That was
Quest.
alright.
The new Dragon Quest, it looks like you can fly on dragons. I don't know. I saw the cinematic.
Maybe.
I saw people on top of them. Maybe that's not right, but
I saw like a bit of Dragon Quest 11. It was just a little bit of the open world, and it was about this. They just did this little like 360-degree look at like the area, and it looked so much more interesting than anything in Final Fantasy 15. But anyway, over at pixelbit.com, we got a ton of entries. Michael117 was the first person to comment. His number 3 is Half-Life 2.
yes.
He says, getting off the train and wandering around City 17, seeing the police oppress the citizens, and getting chased by the Combine until Alex Vance saves you. Which, yeah, like, I've got a lot of problems with Half-Life 2, but when we talk about games that did certain things that were then taken from other games later on, like that kind of, like, walking around, being introduced to thing intro, you know, like, I think about, like, the intro to Arkham Asylum is that. You know, like where it's a very scripted thing, but you're still in control of your character and you're moving around. You know, like that type of storytelling through the environment and not necessarily like a cutscene and giving you control over the character at the time is is very cool.
Yeah, that's what I almost had that as number 3 instead of Chrono Trigger, but I already had BioShock, and I thought that was like a similar itch that it feeds. But I just love that that whole game. I actually used to take screenshots of the like different graffiti on the wall and like saved them all on like an old hard drive somewhere, but just wake up, Mr. Freeman, and like also randomly seeing like the guy in the suit in the middle of the screen and then just being like, where did he go? Why is that never here? Or, like, and like, being like a slave to being in that train and like listening to them and like feeling like you can't go anywhere and you're just like cooped up in this thing, but then like you have to go through like the security and all that. It was like, I really felt like, you know, like I was in a dystopia at that point, and they did it so fast and without like any cinematics at all. It was like all storytelling through gameplay, which is amazing.
Yeah.
Along the same lines as Half-Life 2, and the reason I couldn't put it on the top 3 is because I was also like, Portal 2 is great. Like,
I almost put Portal 2. Like, Wheatley's introduction is so like spot on. Like it's so clever.
They do like the same thing as you felt in Half-Life 2 with being like a slave to being like mentally ill, because you have to press spacebar for all this stuff. Like he's like, oh, please talk or something. And you press spacebar. He's like, so yeah, you may have some minor massive brain damage.
So good. Michael's next one is Fallout 3. Seeing your character go from infancy to his preteen birthday, or her, I guess, to high school exams, culminating with you exiting the vault and seeing the wasteland for the first time, which is pretty much all I've seen of that game like 7 times. Because I keep trying to start that game from the beginning, and then I get out into the world, I'm like, oh wait, this is boring.
Yeah.
So I get to Megaton and I walk around for a bit and I'm like, okay, done.
Yeah.
But that stuff is really cool. Like it's a great way to A, create your character, and B, introduce you to the world, and then like that kind of lens flare when you open the vault for the first time, your eyes are adjusting to the change in lighting is really cool.
Yeah, Fallout 4 was my first one that I played, so it does a similar thing in the character creation that we've already talked about. I thought was like maybe my favorite, where you do it in the shower or whatever, and or you look in the mirror. It's just so awesome at the beginning. But I heard that all of the Fallouts kind of begin the same way. Like I was reading that Reddit thread, and a person was like, "Oh yeah, Fallout 3 when they go like war has changed," and then someone goes, "Yeah," or Fallout 2 when they go war has changed, and then someone goes, "Oh yeah, they got those both from Fallout 1 where they go war has changed," and then someone else goes, "I thought that was from Metal Gear Solid when they said that." So it was like, maybe that's not the most unique, but it is really cool.
I think Metal Gear said, are you going to do it?
Well, yeah, because
Okay.
Robert or Fallout is always war never changes,
Oh, okay.
and then Metal Gear 4 is war has changed, which is funny because I just watched the intro to Metal Gear 4 earlier today, and we'll talk about it in a second because it's going to come up. Michael 117's number 1 is BioShock. Seeing Rapture for the first time from the bathysphere is easily the best. We already went through that at length, but I'm glad somebody picked it, because that was a really cool thing about this is like, there's so many games out there, and like, I think I've played almost every game that was picked by our listeners, but they're so diverse. Like, there's very little overlap. For example, Fire in the Hole, his number 3 says, the Metal Gear Solid series is, my favorite in gaming, and all the opening cutscenes are pretty good. It came down to MGS2 and MGS4, and I'm going with MGS4. The opening monologue of Snake will always be one of my favorite moments in gaming. And yeah, like, just watching it again, like, it still holds up. Like, that game graphically is still a tour de force even 10 years later, or almost 10 years later. It's like 9 years. But also, like, the writing is great, but I also, because Kojima wrote it, I like to think that it's also his meta commentary on game development. Like, just substitute war for game development, and then go watch it again, and just pretend that, like, Solid Snake is Kojima, because it really feels like that, where he's like, you know, like, there's all this control, and like, nobody, like, has any heart, and blah, 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 and it's like, wow, Kojima, you really want to stop making Metal Gear, don't you?
Game development has changed.
That's funny, though, that he said
has.
4 and 2, because I read a top 10 article, and number 2 was number 3. So, like, everybody has their own Metal Gear Solid that starts off the best, but all of them start out great. I mean, in 3, I think he swans dives or something like that, I remember. And there's, like, in The four is probably, I think, the best beginning, and I love that whole game with you like seeing the horse for the first time, or I think is that Ground Zeroes or is that 4? See,
Ground Zeroes is the horse, or 5 is the horse.
Oh yeah, I'm at 5. My bad. See, that's the problem with Metal Gear Solid for me. I conflate everything in that whole series with itself. It's just so convoluted, so I couldn't put it in the top 3. But like, they're all great.
If I was picking a Metal Gear one, it would be the very first one. Mm-hmm. Just because it was another one of those ones where nobody had done anything like that before. And it just came and just like kicked the door down. Like, here's Metal Gear, guys. You've definitely never seen an intro like this before. You know.
And for me, I loved, cause like, even back then, like, I was very cognizant of like the technical aspects of video games and the fact that they basically allowed Solid Snake to change clothes without actually having to show him physically removing the clothing, but it worked where like you hear him removing clothing and then it like lands on the floor and then it does that really cool pan up where it says Metal Gear Solid and you see him just there and it's like, that's really cool.
It didn't show, I don't think it showed Metal Gear Solid until you got in the elevator, because I remember the elevator's going up and the controller's shaking a little bit with the elevator and like, that's cool. And the title screen hits, and when the title screen hits and stops moving, the controller just this big shake.
Yeah.
It was really cool, because that was also when Rumble was new.
Oh yeah, I mean, Metal Gear Solid was like the thing that made Rumble matter, you know?
And Star Fox, I would say. You could argue.
Right. Yeah, you needed to put the Rumble pack in.
Yeah, but I mean, you felt a guy have a heart attack in your hands in Metal Gear.
That's true. Nobody had a heart attack in Star Fox.
You had a Russian psychic move hit your controller with Metal Gear.
Okay, you're winning the argument here.
Fire in the Hole's next one is Final Fantasy VIII. Which, sorry to break it to you guys, but if we're talking about PlayStation Final Fantasies, that's my favorite intro, because I am a sucker for Latin and music. And, like, also just, like, the transition between, like, Squall fighting Cypher and then the feathers turning into the backdrop for Renoa. Like, it's just so beautiful and but he goes on to say, the music in the scenes from the opening starts off slow and as the music picks up, so does the action. It's fun to watch. I would watch it over and over again when the game was released. And yeah, me too. I would just over and over, just watch that intro.
Me too. It was freaking perfect.
I love that game too.
I think it's the best on the PlayStation ones, but it's just not the one that had the biggest impact on me personally, if that makes sense.
Sure, yeah. I mean, 7 is so impactful because, like, you know, especially for you and I, Angelo, like, having gone from, like, the Nintendo and Super Nintendo Final Fantasies, and then probably, if you were like me, looking at the N64 Final Fantasy stuff in magazines where it's like, oh, this is gonna look so awesome on the N64, and then when they made the big announcement that it was switching to PlayStation, and it was like, oh, snap. But then you saw what it looked like in motion for the first time. It was like, oh, N64 can't do this. And then Fire in the Hole's number 1 is Onimusha 3.
Whoa.
He says this one is obvious, I think. The opening cutscene for Onimusha 3 shows some great fight choreography and a final showdown at the end that is pure awesome. Hit up YouTube and watch immediately if you haven't seen it yet. Yes, go do that. I remember when that game came out and we were all blown away in the store, and that was another one that we constantly were running on a loop. Cause they did, like, the motion capture in that CG intro is just so incredible. And you also gotta remember that the person who is, Samanosuke, like, he's modeled after a real actor. And that actor is in one of the big, beautiful, like, Chinese choreographed action movies that came out after Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. I forget which one.
Hero?
It wasn't Hero.
That was a good one.
Was it The House of Blue Leaves or something like
Flying
that?
Daggers.
Oh, Flying Daggers.
House of Flying Daggers. He's in that.
That was a good one.
So if you watch House of Flying Daggers and you think that a guy looks kind of familiar, it's because it's Samanosuke.
That's awesome. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that intro was. I didn't have that game, but a friend of mine showed me that at his house, and I was like, "Do that again. I need to see that a second time."
Well, that reminded me of like one of my friends, Ryan Walsh, who told me about what like his favorite intro, which is also got, well, the character model is based on a real person, which is Blackbeard, and the game is Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag. And I think all the Assassin's Creed have great intros, but this one it's like it made you want to be a pirate, and it makes you think like you're a little kid again, because like when you're playing like in the backyard or something. Everybody wants to be pirates growing up, and like then you want to like find booty and like all that and like gold, and but like this is like it tells a story from like, you know, the great Blackbeard's perspective after he's been wizened and he's old and he's drinking and like, but like he's not talking about himself. Even Blackbeard's like, so if it's adventure you seek, then Edward Kenway is your man. But like, that's you. And like, then you become him, you know? And like, not to mention, it was probably the best visuals I'd seen at the time. So
I vaguely remember, but I gotta go back and look at it. I mean, I loved what I played of Assassin's Creed 4, but I don't remember distinctly the intro, but I do remember that part where it was like, you think he's talking about himself, but then he's talking about your character. So I gotta go back and rewatch that. Actually, I mean, everybody who's listening to this, I mean, you should probably just write these down as you're listening and then just go on YouTube and just have an afternoon of it, because these are great things to see if you have never seen them or if you haven't seen them in years. Darth Hader chimes in and says, sorry guys to do this quick. Devil May Cry for PS2, which I feel that was the first game to come out post Matrix that kind of tried to take a little bit of that Matrix style. Go and watch the intro and see if you agree. It doesn't hold up too well.
what did it do?
Like I thought it would. It's a little cheesy. It's just kind of cheesy with the dialogue, but it's basically like, you know, Dante in Devil May Cry on the phone, and then Trish comes in, like she drives her motorcycle through his front, like the front of his store, you know, and then fights him to try to test to see if he is the son of Sparta. And like there's a part where she throws a motorcycle at him and he like uses his guns to juggle it in the air, which, you know, is awesome and ridiculous at the same time. It's still pretty cool, but I definitely felt, especially with the way they had Trish, like it just had this kind of like Trinity vibe from the Matrix, and that would be about the right time frame. You know, Matrix came out in 99, this came out in 2001.
Yeah.
Like that's about enough time for them to be able to, you know, shoehorn that in there.
I totally remember that now that you mention it, when you said the phone and the motorcycle.
Yeah.
Wasn't quite
His
wasn't quite as directly an inspiration as like say Max Payne. I think that was the first one that did like just straight up ripped out bullet time.
You're right, and that was the same year. Like that came out, you know, in Chrono Crossing we're doing 2001, but that was the year that Max Payne came out.
Did anybody mention Max Payne? Because that was all right.
I mean,
For intro?
Yeah,
No, I don't think no one mentioned that Max Payne.
I'm surprised, but I thought it might have somebody might have gone, oh man, I remember the intro to Max Payne being really cool. Okay, go ahead.
Darth Hader's second one is Final Fantasy X, and I'm just going to go ahead and say that to me the intro is from when you start up until like Tidus gets sucked in by Sin. So like that whole sequence, like obviously like listen to my story. That's a beautiful scene. But like for me, like the tipping point is when they show the Blitzball game. That's kind of like the moment where if like, if you're not on board for that music and like that cutscene, you're probably not on board for the game. Cause it's like, this is a very different Final Fantasy, guys. And like it's like right up in your face with that, you know, with that heavy metal track.
I'm still waiting for that Blitzball game that feels like soccer. Yeah. Like, cause it looked like it was going to be like 3-dimensional soccer in a sphere, you know, and then it was randomized stats and Excel
on a
spreadsheet
2D
the
plane.
game in water.
Oh, you want to talk about Excel spreadsheet the game? That's Final Fantasy X too, because the Blitzball thing in there is literally just managing his Blitzball team. So it's even worse over there. And his last one is Mass Effect 2, which so I've described a lot of these, but Mass Effect 2 is one of those things where even though the game is like many years old now, I still don't want to spoil it, because I feel that like if you're planning on playing the Mass Effect series, you know, and maybe some people are getting more interested in going back because Andromeda's coming out this year, it's not something that I want to spoil for people, because I think it's such an impactful like intro to a game. Like I watched it again today and I was still blown away. I was like, I can't believe they really went there. I can't believe that they did this. Like this is how this game opens. This is amazing. And graphically it still looks incredible. Cause most of it is in engine. There is some switching between in engine and CG, but for the most part, it's done in the graphical engine and it looks incredible. So if you don't mind spoiling it, by all means go to YouTube and check it out. But if you're planning on playing that series anytime soon, just do yourself a favor and wait until you get there, because It's just, you have to see it to believe it. Extrian, one of our faithful listeners, also chimes in. His number 3 is God of War 3. He says the whole opening up until defeating Poseidon was amazing. It was like a game ending, which I guess it technically was. I always think of God of War 2 as being my favorite overall of the series, and especially the intro. But I went ahead and rewatched the intro of God of War 3 today. That's the best one. The number of polygons on display at any given moment in the beginning of that game is at such a scope that I don't think we've even seen anything come close to it on the current generation. I can't think of anything that I've seen so far on the PS4 or Xbox One that's come close to pushing, like, what's going on in that beginning of God of War 3, because you start on the back of Gaia, who's a titan that's bigger than anything you've ever seen in a video game. And then you're crawling up, like, her body and her arms while getting attacked by Poseidon's, like, water horse crab monsters that then culminates with this giant, like, there's like 4 of them plus this gigantic Poseidon while you're still on top of Gaia, who's moving around. And I actually watched, like, when I beat the game, like, there's actually a really cool making of video that gets unlocked about how they did that sequence. And it's amazing. Like, I can't believe that they pulled that off. And honestly, like if they top that in the new God of War, I'll be genuinely shocked.
I can't believe you just made me want to play God of War again.
Yeah, and God of War 3 is not the one that I want to revisit. I have problems with that game.
Yeah, but the storytelling is so good. I mean, that's why I would never wanted there to be another one, but you just got me hyped for the new one. I think the ending is more what I loved about that game, but yeah, I think the first battle is amazing too.
Yeah. It's really good stuff. Do you have something, Angelo? I looked like you were going to chime in.
I didn't actually play God of War 3.
Oh, okay.
You were talking about, like, you haven't seen anything come close to that on this generation, and that makes me think of my other friend, Ryan Jonker, who said that the modern classic for, like, introduction, an introductory cinematic in a game is Battlefield 1. And if you haven't seen that, it actually is amazing. And it's like, you have to play it. You have to play the first level before anything else unlocks while the game's installing. And, like, there's so much cool stuff about it. Like, I only remember the end where you're like, you realize you're like a minority in World War I, and, like, you're facing off against one other person. It's like neither of you want to pull the trigger. Like, that's what war really was. Like, during that time, only 40% or so of the soldiers actually shot bullets at the other soldiers. They had a really big problem with people actually fighting each other, and that, like, really scratched a reality itch for me. But my friend remembered a different part of it, and what he said was, yeah, I mean, you had to start a campaign and play the tank campaign. After you got through the first mission, artillery started coming down, and you had to release a dove to get word out. It was complete chaos, and as you're dying, as you're all dying, and then they release the dove, and you control it to fly over the battlefield. It's all peaceful, and the music is pretty when everybody's getting slaughtered and blown up beneath you. So, like,
oh wow,
yeah, I mean, that's the thing about Battlefield 1 is there's like 6 or 7 different introductions, because each of the stories is like a vignette, and none of them, like, really relate to each other, but they're all, like, their own, like, contained games. And in a way, like, yeah, they have like 7 different introductions for 7 different characters or so. And even while you're playing that, like, if you die, it just, like, makes you a ghost, and you just go to, like, another character next to you. So, like, it doesn't make you respawn or anything like that. Like, that's the end of that character, but, like, there's another person right next to you who you take over as. And that's something else that I hadn't seen in a introduction to a video game.
I'll have to check that out.
People talk about Call of Duty Modern Warfare's intro a lot, because that was the first time I would have ever... I don't play a whole lot of first-person shooters. We kind of talked about that. Like, I play the big ones, and I usually like them a lot, but a whole lot of these military-themed ones that are kind of all over the place have kind of burnt me out. But I did play Modern Warfare, and nobody told me it was going to happen in that intro, and it was real cool. Like, it was real, like, oh, wow, what? I'm crawling on the ground now? I'm dying? Are you serious? Well, I guess I got to... Oh, that's supposed to happen. Like, it was really weird and really kind of incredible. So, yeah.
Yeah. Alrighty. Extrian, his number 2 is The Last of Us. I really like Last of Us, but I'm not as high on it as most. That would be me as well. That said, the opening really grabbed me. Maybe because it was, maybe because it was, shortly after the birth of my daughter, but it hit me at an emotional level, probably no other game has. So yeah, like, I can totally see that, like we said earlier. And then his number one, no surprise here, if you've listened to the show, cause it's the reason that he started listening to us anyway, Chrono Cross. It's mostly nostalgia, but the cinematic before starting the game blew me away. The music and scenes all meshed together, and is ultimately led me to buy it.
Yep.
So,
I was actually reading, the reason I have Chrono Trigger on is because I was reading an article about why Chrono Cross is like one of the top of all time, and I watched that again, and I was like, yeah, that actually that made me like really think about like what it means to like have been inspired to do something. Like it for me was a metaphor for like wanting to play games, because it talks about fate and like when you like really get into something, you can't remember like what started it all. And for me, it was like, yep, right now I can't remember what started like this whole research project and like researching all the best introductions and all that. But like, this is totally a great metaphor for like playing video games and life in general. So
the PS1 was like a powerhouse for really good intros.
Oh yeah. I mean, cause that's really what they had, you know, it's like, the graphics were great for the time, but I mean, really, like a lot of the selling point, especially for Square at the time, was no, we've got these really cool cutscenes, guys, and we're gonna front load them. You know, you're gonna want to watch this like every time that you start the game. Mm-hmm. Lastly, at Pixelbit, our fellow Pixelbit writer, Catherine, her number 3 is Kingdom Hearts 2. She says, I remember the first time I played this game. I got a full hour in and suddenly the title screen popped up as I was switching from Roxas to Sora. I realized at that point that I hadn't even started playing the actual game, and that really stuck with me. I watched that one just recently too, just the intro cutscene actually, and man, I love Kingdom Hearts 1, something fierce. I really wish that the rest of the series hadn't just become Tetsuya Nomura's like mental masturbation, because, like, they got Nomuraized so fast, and it's like, and then and I was like, oh, well, maybe I'll like get some of the re-releases and try to like get caught up, and it's like I can't even figure out where I'm supposed to go because they've worked the naming conventions so badly on those HD re-releases. Just stop. Nomura, bad. Her second one is Legend of Zelda Wind Waker. The music is what made this intro, and is some of the best in the series. And I think it was actually before we started recording, but I recently went to look at the Wii U version of that game, and man, Wind Waker still looks so good, and in HD it looks even better. So, and
I was shocked too when you first see the Zelda in that game, and she's not just like a princess in distress, you know? Or
yeah. And I love the character or the personality in Link, like all of his facial expressions and stuff. Like it was the first time that I ever like actually cared about him as a character. And I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, there's no game that had won me over more by its actual gameplay than that game. Like, if it originally was like, nope, never, I hate this, like, after I first saw it. And it became one of the top 3 Zeldas for me.
And I love that, too, because that's one of those things that I enjoy about, like, having been there when and remembering now. It's like, all the people who, like, reminisce about how great Wind Waker is and how it was, like, one of the best. It's like, I remember when all of you people were so angry and you were boycotting Nintendo because you thought it looked like the stupidest thing and you wanted your realistic Zelda and wah, wah, wah. And it's like, yeah, you know. Same thing with Final Fantasy X. Like, people, for years, people said, like, oh, 10 is the last really, like, great Final Fantasy game. And it's like, people hated Final Fantasy X when it came out. And her number 1 is Final Fantasy. She says Final Fantasy 6 with my immediate thought, so it wins that first place. Chills every time.
Yeah,
the 3 Matt.
Yeah,
absolutely up there.
I mean, if we want to talk again about like stuff that gets Julian verklempt, trudging through the snow in Magitech armor. And then, oh, Angelo, you were the one, I think you showed me on Twitter, like somebody got the Magitech armor in Final Fantasy 14 and then found a snowy area and started walking purposefully, like, away from the camera, and then they put that music over, and I was like, why am I crying right now, Angelo?
It was really good. Who did that?
That was really nice.
Yeah, it was somebody I followed that did that. I'll give him credit later. I gotta find him.
Going to Twitter, man, this is gonna be a long segment, but it's a really great topic. JD from Pixelbit at a myth known as JD says Metroid Prime, which, Intro of Metroid Prime is really great, except that it pisses me off every time that I see it because there's that tantalizing moment where the camera pans around behind Samus's back and it hesitates for a split second and you think it's going to be a really awesome third-person game and then it goes into her helmet. I'm really sad because I never wanted a first-person Metroid. Not saying it's not a fantastic game. It's just every time that I see that camera angle, I'm like, oh, what could have been? That would have been so cool.
I like it as a first-person game, I'll be honest with you.
Oh, I do too, but, Angelo, especially if you ever have played Burning Rangers on the Sega Saturn, and then, like, think about that type of gameplay, but with that Nintendo shine. Oh,
I have honestly never put my hands on a Sega Saturn except for, like, at a demo kiosk. I don't know anybody that owned one.
Yeah, I bought one at Walmart for $40 one time before they were discontinued. Think about that for a second. $40
For a console.
For a console. JD's second one is Doom, which I don't think we have to say anything more about. It, you know, like Doom. Doom in all capital letters with a period. That's how I'm going to refer to Doom 2016 from now on.
Oh.
I gotta give that one a little more time. It very well could be my favorite intro, but I gotta give it some space. I gotta give it a couple years. I gotta, like, go back and revisit it and be like, no, yeah, that's the stuff.
Yeah.
And then his third one is Mass Effect 2, which, yeah. Again, I'm not gonna go into detail on that one.
I honestly thought that was gonna be your number one.
Which one, Mass Effect 2?
Yeah. I was surprised it didn't even make it.
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, there were so many games, And honestly, like, part of it was that, like, I talk so big about Mass Effect so often. Yeah. I've never talked about Brutal Legend on this show. And Brutal Legend is, like, it's such a special little intro that I wanted to, like, give it some props. And again, like, you can come at this so many different ways. And, like, honestly, I could have made my whole list 360 games. And I almost did because it's great stuff. Casey, our fellow writer, at Officer Meeseeks, says Resident Evil 4, which I would say that's all the way up from, like, the beginning up until when the bell rings and the Ganados, like, kind of walk away from you. Like, that whole first, like, battle in the town, you know, where you're, like, pushing things in front of the door to, like, barricade it, and, like, they're coming in through the windows and, like, lifting ladders and stuff. Like, it's just a really cool combat scenario, and when you realize all the stuff that you're able to do, it's like, it kind of, like, opens up this whole new world of action. At least it did at the time. I mean, now it's kind of like, okay, whatever, but, well, no, that's dismissing it, because I watched it again today, and it's still really cool. And I replayed it when they released it on 360 a couple years ago, and enjoyed the game just as much then as I did when it first came out, so it definitely holds up. His second one is the first God of War, which, you know, that Leviathan battle is
pretty all
something
right.
special. Yeah. And his last one is Skies of Arcadia, which I looked at the intro cutscene, and I mean, it was like, to me, like, I love Skies of Arcadia, don't get me wrong, and I don't know, I couldn't find, like, a really good, like, beginning thing of the game that wasn't just being, like, blabbed over by a Let's Player. So I'm not sure exactly what segment he's talking about, but if it's just the intro, like, a tracked video, like, it's good, but it's kind of like, to me, it was kind of typical RPG, you know, circa 2001, 2000, you know, type.
Maybe it was like
stuff.
His first RPG, just like for us, Final Fantasy VII, you know. Could.
Maybe. I mean, you know, it's very charming, and it's a great game. I wish I owned it still. Adam Sexton, who's at Avid Acrid Jam, not Avid Jam, like I've been saying for freaking ever. I've been calling you Fang this whole time. Like, I just never realized it was 3 different words, so I'm sorry, Adam. Avid Acrid Jam. He went a different way with it, Angelo, and I like that you left it, like, kind of open to interpretation, because he went, like, straight up, like, a tracked video style. So, his first one is Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past.
Oh, yup. That's in my top 5, for sure.
Yeah. Super Street Fighter 2. That's the one where you have the really awesome, like, super detailed version of Ryu, like, standing there in his battle pose, and then he does the Hadouken in your face. Mm-hmm. Like, that's really nice. And then Donkey Kong Country. I don't really remember Donkey Kong Country,
They're
but
usually pretty. If you're talking about, is he talking about the new one, like Donkey Kong Country Returns, or
I think just Donkey Kong Country original. Yeah.
I mean, the intros are funny. Like they're usually a little slapstick. That is the one where it's the original Donkey Kong. He's Cranky Kong now. Is on top of the girders from the original game, and he's got like this crank.
Okay, yeah. The little gramophone thing.
It's very slapstick. It's cute.
Yeah.
I like it.
Chris IOZ, at Crozy. His first one is Arcus Odyssey, which I had never heard of. So kudos to you for picking a game that I've literally never heard of. It's a Sega Genesis game, like an early Genesis game, and it's kind of like a Zelda style, like an overhead action style game, but it's 2 players.
Really?
But the intro is really nice because it's that really cool late 80s / early 90s, anime art style. And I really like, that's all I can say because like, it's a specific look. Like, it's like Project A-ko or Record of Lodoss War, that era of anime. And it's done in like Phantasy Star 4 style of like, the way that they would do like the boxes for the animations and stuff. It's really well done. Like I actually said like, wow, at one point because I was surprised to see a Genesis like putting out graphics that nice. Cause it's also early looking Genesis. Like I think it's probably like maybe second year in the Genesis, as far as like going based on like the art style and stuff like that. So check it out. I should probably look and see if it's at a decent price. Cause I would like to own that game now. It looks really cool. His second one is Ninja Gaiden for NES, which I didn't have to look up because that's burned into my brain. That's where cutscenes come from, guys. That's the genesis of them. So, yeah. And then his third one was one that I was aware of, but I never actually played I never actually played it. 3 Dirty Dwarves for the Sega Saturn, which, is pretty nifty. It starts off with these kids playing D&D. And so they're like rolling dice and stuff, and the game master's talking about what's going on, and then it cuts to the Dirty Dwarves, and they're like fighting, it's what they're describing in the game. And then at some point, like, the kids roll the die, and then the dwarves get transported into our world. And so they end up like crash landing into a sporting goods store. They're like, oh, look at all these weapons and armor. So then they like get like bats and like shoulder pads and football helmets, and
This sounds amazing.
that's how they dress.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, it's pretty neat.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Now, wait, what did you mean about like the first cinematic was Ninja Gaiden? Because I don't know so much about Ninja Gaiden.
Oh, well, I mean, that was like literally, well, I don't know if it's, I've always heard it credited as the originator of the cutscene. Now, I could be wrong, but like, it was literally like there would be animated like story bits between the levels where, you would have like, like here's like the close up of Ryu Hayabusa and it's like his face and like it's slightly animating and there's like text on the bottom of the screen. Like that was definitely the first NES game that did that. There may have been like maybe a PC game or something, but as far as I know, Ninja Gaiden was like, they started that, and kind of the reason that it's called Gaiden or, side story has to do with them putting those animated scenes into the game. But that's where the name of the game comes from. So, and like the intro for Ninja Gaiden is really cool because it's like your typical like ninja showdown where they're like in a field and it's like a red ninja and a blue ninja and they like jump into the air super high like they do in like, anime and stuff like that. And you hear the chink! And then like they both land and they're both standing there and then you see the one ninja just flop over. It's just like really cool.
Yeah.
It was an incredible cutscene. For the time, like, that was another one where people were just like, you gotta see this.
Yeah. James Kalunga, at J_Kalunga, who's my buddy back from Game Fella, says Ninja Gaiden for NES. Final Fantasy VI for SNES. And then, Ridge Racer Type 4 for PlayStation 2. Now, I've known James for a long time, and I worked with him for a lot of years. He had the biggest crush on the Ridge Racer girl. Like, that was real. And people forget about the Ridge Racer girl, but she was up there. She was like the Japanese Lara Croft. She was a big effing deal. To the point that when they redesigned her, or no, they didn't redesign her, they changed the character. Like, it was an issue. Like, people were mad when they switched over to the new Ridge Racer girl. But I rewatched the Ridge Racer Type 4 intro, and I remember because, like, for one, the music's really good and everything, but she like basically hitches a ride from one of the drivers, and the camera is looking, it's like from your perspective as the driver, and she looks into the car window, and she gives you this little, like, she like bites her lip a little bit, and it's like, oh, okay, yeah, that's some good stuff.
Yeah.
That's the emotion engine at work right there, my friends. Let's see, I think this is our last one. Yeah. Lastly, from Bob over at TNB Podcast, he's at BG Bronson. He says, Dead or Alive Ultimate 2, which I thought was fine. Like, it focuses a lot on the backstory of Kasumi and Ayane and Hayato, like the ninja part of Dead or Alive. And Angelo, you would hate it because it's actually done with an Aerosmith song in the background.
Actually,
So
I thought that was a really good one. That was
Oh, okay.
Dead or Alive. Was that the Ultimate one? Dead or Alive 2 Ultimate?
Yes,
They're all friggin' Aerosmith songs, aren't they?
they're all, yeah, they are, because, yeah.
The one that I think of that I thought was really good was it was set to Dream On.
That's this one.
Is that
Yeah.
Is that the right one?
This is the right one, yeah.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
very good.
I just know you're vitriol towards Aerosmith, so I just figured you'd...
It's not really vitriol. It's just dislike.
His second one is Assassin's Creed Revelation, which I watched, but not being an Assassin's Creed fan, I was kind of like, okay, like I'm
Which one's
kind of,
that?
I don't know what's going on. That's the last one with Ezio. Like that was they finished off that whole part right before.
Yeah, I remember that, but I don't remember what happens in the intro.
Like it's Desmond stuck in the Animus, and he has to he's talking to a guy who's apparently trapped in the Animus forever because his body is dead. And I don't know, I found it to be rather confusing because I don't play those games.
Yeah, I mean, I loved all those games, and Revelations had a lot of, it had a really good revelation at the end of the game of that one, and a great ending to the franchise. It was one of my first Funko Pops, Ezio, and I even taught a kid named Ezio, and I was like, oh my god, is he coming to life? It's all happening. I was really into Assassin's Creed so much that I can't even play it anymore, but the Ezio storyline was definitely the best games.
Yeah. And then his last one, he just put a screenshot. He's like, and this one, and it's from Bad Dudes, and it's just a picture of the guy with the glasses saying, the president has been kidnapped by ninjas. Are you a bad enough dude to rescue the president? So, okay, Bob. Okay.
Yeah.
2 thumbs up for that one. That's a good point.
I was hoping that
Man.
would make it because on Reddit, everyone goes this is the best, and you have to click it, and it's always that.
I feel like that's from a lot of people who don't even know what the game is from.
It is the best. It is the best part of that game because that game is not good.
It's not, but honestly, if we're going that route, I would rather pick Vigilante, where you're actually trying to save Madonna. I would much rather save Madonna than the president.
Depends which president.
80s era Madonna. Think about it.
I'm thinking about it.
She's ageless.
It's not.
I'd still do everything to her. Anyway, that's it for Stage Select. It's a very lengthy one, but thank you everybody for your entries. It was a lot of fun. It is my choice for the next Stage Select. And, so here we go. This should be a fun one as well. With the Nintendo Switch right around the corner, especially as our next episode comes out, it'll be literally right around the corner. I want to know your 3 favorite video game consoles of all time. Video game home consoles, not portables, not PC. I don't care if you're Master Race. We're talking home consoles. Top 3 all time. Show your work.
All right then. I am surprised nobody mentioned Parasite Eve.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so many, right? We could literally do a podcast about video game intros, and that could go up to
11.
the 106 episodes that we're at now, and we'd still not be done.
Yeah.
I'm surprised nobody mentioned Super Mario Brothers level 1-1.
I can see where you're going there, because it's especially because it's so many people's introduction to video games, period.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's even though levels counted, I don't know. Yeah.
And then you go down the pipe to 1-2.
Get that one up. Yeah. So anyway, if you want to submit to Stage Select, you can hit us up on Twitter at NWPcast, or head over to pixelbit.com and throw it in the comments for episode 106. And we'll get to that in our next episode. But for now, we're going to roll on into the Consumption Junction. and we'll try to run through it a little quickly because that was a hell of a stage select segment. That was almost an episode right there.
So I'm causing myself some pain now. Getting really tired.
You brought this on yourself,
I
sir.
did.
You're lucky you're half a continent away.
I'll go first because I've just got one thing, and it's real quick. We don't have to linger on it, and that way, like, you guys can spend a little bit more time on stuff. Since our last episode, I played all the way through Hitman 2016, and I think I hate to amend it so quickly, but that's my number 2 game of the year for 2016. Wow. It knocked off Super Hot. It's really great. They are some of the best Hitman levels I have ever played. And now, granted, I've only played 2 other Hitman games, but that means I've played 3 out of the 5. So, I think I'm doing pretty well there. They are so intricate and so well detailed. Like, it's amazing. Like, you go to these exotic locations. Like, the only one that's not exotic is Colorado, because it's not even a nice part of Colorado. It's kind of like a militia base, and so it's not very pretty. But every other level is like, you feel like James Bond, and you're like, oh, like, I get to go to this gorgeous villa in Sapienza and then go murder people, and like, the water's so blue and you can see off forever in the horizon, and like, all of the little bits and pieces, like just the way the rooms are, like, they feel like lived in spaces. And it also works to the gameplay, because it's like, well, I need some rat poison, to poison this person's drink. I bet there's probably some rat poison around the maintenance area. So you go around the maintenance area, and it's like, sure enough, here's some rat poison, here's a wrench, here's a screwdriver, stuff you would expect to find there. So, if you're trying to, like, do, like, a specific thing, like, if you have a plan of attack, like, for instance, I was on one level where I had to fix this little, buggy, and I needed a wrench, and I was like, crap, I need a wrench. And I was like, let me look around, I have a pretty good idea where I can find one. Sure enough, I found the wrench, but then I also needed a screwdriver, and I had to hunt for that, but I was like, it's gotta be down in this basement area, because this is where all the maintenance people are, this is where the laundry room is, there's gotta be a screwdriver around here somewhere. And then sure enough, there was a screwdriver. It's exactly what I needed. So I did the thing, got the dirt done, killed the guy, it was great. It's a little bit controversial for Hitman fans, because this one, they started this, like, opportunity system. As you're exploring the environment and you're listening in on conversations, like, they'll clue you in on, like, oh, this might be a good way to take this guy out. So then you can decide to track this opportunity. So if you track the opportunity, it's almost like waypoints, where it's like, okay, first you need to go get this outfit. Here's a guy to get it from. You see him on the map. Like, you go to him, and then you figure out how to get the outfit off of him without, raising alarms. And then it's like, okay, now you need this item. So then if you don't have it already, it shows you where to get it. And so on one hand, it's like, yeah, that kind of takes the discovery out of Hitman. But I really like this system, because the levels are so freaking huge. And there's, like, literally, like, I've been through some of the levels like 3 and 4 times, and I'm like, I never saw this area before. And I wouldn't have seen this area if this other opportunity hadn't, like, brought me through this hallway. And now I'm thinking, oh, next time I play this level, I'm coming down here and I'm getting that. I'm going to use that. Because there's so many different ways to take people out. And yeah, some of them are, like, scripted. Like, I killed somebody while she was doing yoga. Like, I dressed up as her yoga instructor and then killed her while she was doing tree pose. I pushed her off of a ledge while she was doing tree pose. It was awesome. But at the same time, it's like, another guy was just like, okay, this is the last guy. Like, I'm almost done with this level. The exit is right there, but he's surrounded by guards. I'm just going to chunk a screwdriver in his head. And that's what I did. And then I just booked it. You can just be so creative in that game.
This almost sounds like an exercise in, like, dark comedy too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And to add to the dark comedy, what I would do is, cause it's 6 episodes. And so after I would finish an episode, I would then go watch Brad Shoemaker and Dan Reichert on the Giant Bomb cast, or on Giant Bomb, play through that same level. They're so amazingly bad at Hitman. Like, to the point that it started to get a little frustrating, where I'm like, how do you guys not understand how this game works at this point? Like, you actually have the developers sit with you for a whole session, and you still don't understand how, like, the whole system works? I don't understand. I was, like, pulling what little hair I have left out of my head, but it's a lot of fun, and they do the craziest stuff. Like, there's one where they knock out, like, every soldier in this area and pile them up, and then knock out the target, throw him on top of the pile, and then attach a mine to a toilet on the upper level and then throw that off the balcony and then blow up the entire pile of bodies with the remote detonator. That's the type of stuff you can do in this Hitman game.
That's fantastic.
That's awesome.
It's amazing.
It sounds like Saints Row.
It's not as zany as Saints Row, but yeah, as far as like just creative fun, like yeah, it reaches some of those points. So, not to keep going, but Saints Row 4 was very close to being on my list for stage select. Very close.
With like the title scroll and everything.
With like, yeah, because like they start like explaining, like basically it starts off with like a narrator talking about the Third City Saints, but they're basically describing like Saints Row versus GTA, where like, at first people thought they were usurpers to the throne, and they thought that they were too serious and they didn't know what to expect. So then the Saints made a choice. They needed to be, they needed to have more fun and less mercy killing, which is a straight up like, because Saints Row 2 and Grand Theft Auto 4 came out the same year, and that's kind of where the split started. And then Saints Row the Third is where they really said, "Oh no, we're just gonna have fun." But then like the fact that you're like dismantling this nuclear warhead while another Aerosmith song is playing in the background and like everybody's saying goodbye to you tearfully, it's really good. Anyway, I'm sorry. That's all I have for Consumption Junction. Highly recommend playing Hitman. I wouldn't be surprised if like they end up letting you download like the first level for free at some point here pretty soon. So at least if that happens, give that a shot. A lot of people will probably complain that it's only 6 levels for $60 as opposed to the 13 levels that Hitman Blood Money was. But the levels are so much more intricate and infinitely more replayable than Blood Money is. So
they're gonna add
I really
more
can't
levels,
recommend it enough. I'm sorry?
I thought there was like downloadable content. They're going to be more episodes or something.
There will, but you'll have to pay for those too. So, if you're just looking at the numbers, it's like, yeah, you get like double the game in Blood Money for the same price, but that's really not true because the levels in Blood Money are much smaller and there's a smaller scope as to what you can pull off. Like the possibilities are nearly endless in each level of Hitman. So, Hitman 2016. I really wish they could have just called it Hitman: Agent 47. Something. Let me differentiate this from the rest of the series. It's so stupid.
Man who
It's
hit.
been like a thing lately, though. Like, well, at least they gave Tomb Raider a subtitle, but Doom was just Doom. What's the
Yeah,
other one they did that with? Did they do that with Wolfenstein? No, they called that the New Order.
they do it all the time. It really bothers
Ratchet
me.
and Clank.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. I'm not a fan.
All right. What's next?
I don't know, Angelo. What do you have?
Yeah.
I got to tell you, I haven't had time to play anything new. Like, I'm still working on the same stuff I was working on last week.
Mm-hmm.
I spent the entire weekend. Julian, have you had to do any plumbing yet?
No, I haven't because I live in an apartment. I believe in maintenance-free living.
You're a wise man. Plumbing sucks.
That's what I hear.
So here's what happened. I'll be quick with the story. I have children. And at some point, the little stopper that goes in the drain in the upstairs bathroom sink miraculously just broke. We don't know how it happened. Nobody knows how this happened. But it's broken. So I'm like, well, I'll replace that at some point. How hard could it be? And, with that thing out, because I have to pull it out, otherwise it just plugs the drain. With that thing off, we just had this open hole, and I'm like, something's going to fall down there. And my oldest, who's old enough to shave now, has a little electric razor that fell off the mirror shelf medicine cabinet thing in the bathroom, hit the countertop. The top popped off, and all the little bits, one of them, landed all over the place. It did not go down the drain. But then my youngest was in there, and he was doing something, and he knocked one of them down the drain. So he doesn't want to get yelled at by his brother or get in any sort of trouble, which I don't think I would have gotten in trouble because I knew this was going to happen anyway. The part where I got a little frustrated was when he decided a good idea would be to take a magnet. Try to somehow fish that down the drain and get out the piece of razor. That failed.
But you got to admire the thought process there.
It's beautiful kid logic. I love it.
Yeah.
I don't get to see kid logic a whole lot more anymore. And I thought, well, I'll just take the trap off, get everything out. How hard could it be? I had to replace, by the time I was done, I had taken the thing and put it together at least a dozen times. Like retaping it and like replacing everything, and just, it's a nightmare. And like at one point, one of the pipes cracked. And which metal pipes can crack. Okay, that's great. Thank you, life. 4 trips to Lowe's and Home Depot at least. It was insane. I hate plumbing, but I did fix it, but that took an entire weekend.
Yeah.
I mean, it could have been worse. Could have been toilet related.
Yeah.
Like after it had been used.
Right.
That could have been bad. See, me, I mean, like I said, like I'm maintenance free living, so like if something happens, I just call the apartment office and they're here lickety split. But even if I was in your situation, Angelo, I just pull out that phone book, make some calls, say, "Hey, plumber man," "Hey, Culligan man."
Like when you do that the first time, you realize it costs like $100 just for that guy to ring your doorbell, and he would have just pulled everything out and replaced it, which is almost what I ended up doing anyway. But I only had to pay for parts, which was like $40, whereas it would have been like a $250 job if somebody came to my house. So
That's true. For me, I just don't trust myself to be good at that stuff. So you must have felt pretty good, like when you were done, like, adulting, I did that. That's really cool. Me, I would have been like, there's no way I'm going to pull this off.
I'm not going to lie. I called my father twice, because he does do this stuff. Like, he owns apartments and he's like the guy who does all this stuff. I was never very good at it. If anybody decides they want to try this, pipe wrench, do not use. Okay? You would think you have to tighten these things with a pipe wrench, but you're wrong. You're supposed to just like thread, there's like tape you put around everything, and then you hand tighten it as much as you can. And then if it leaks a little bit, you give it like a bit of a crank with a pipe wrench. But yeah, first thing I did was, just tighten everything. That'll make it better. Boy, I broke everything down there. Don't do that.
This plumbing minute brought to you by no.
Hey, Super Mario's a plumber. That's how I'm gonna. Plumbers and wear ties. Patrick, I'm pretty much done.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I didn't really play anything new, but I got one cool story. I applied for a job with Nintendo to like demo the Nintendo Switch. I'm not even sure what it was like that I applied to. Honestly, I gave them a headshot and a body shot. Turns out someone called me back the next day. I got my first paying gig as like playing video games. I'm getting like $20 an hour to show it off. First, they're going to demo it to me for 8 hours straight. Then the second day and the third day, I'm going to demo it to like developers inside the industry. Like Yoshi going to be there, which is amazing.
What?
Yeah. And I've got...
Are you sure you can talk about this?
Yeah, I feel like we're getting...
I think we might be getting into NDA territory, my friend.
Oh, maybe.
Have you signed anything yet?
Yeah, I didn't read it, though.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
We should.
All right.
Okay, maybe...
Probably not
Oh,
do this.
shit. Maybe you should cut a
Yeah,
little
you
bit,
should
but I
probably
could
not
I
do
could
this,
say
man.
that I'm getting paid by Nintendo to show off. I shouldn't say who's going to be there. Probably.
Yeah, I'll just bleep that part out.
Yeah.
Switch. I wouldn't mention who's going to be there. I would just mention that maybe, hey, Nintendo hired me to like do some demos for them and leave it at that.
Yeah, well...
I think we can say that it's the Switch. Like, I think that's
But
fine.
it's going to be open to
But-
the public on the 19th too, so which is like awesome. Which is awesome. I was going to say, like, look out for people in Chicago demoing the Nintendo new console or something. But I can't say maybe like what I'm going to be doing. I don't even know yet. They didn't even disclose the location. But I'm so
you might wanna
excited.
Maybe hold off on this until you read that paper you signed, man.
Yeah, because I was going to say, like, oh man, like, we should do a special, like, after you play it, because that'd be really cool. But if you're NDA'd to smithereens, then we can't do that. So go read that paper, and then let us know what you can talk about. I'm very excited for you, Patrick. That's really neat. But those things, they don't play. They do not play with that NDA stuff. So
True, yeah. I mean, I bet they want good publicity, but yeah, probably we got to hold off till next time. I just got really excited and wanted to tell you guys.
Well, that actually reminds me of one thing, because you said it was open to the public. So is anybody going to try to get an E3 ticket?
Oh, yeah.
Did you hear about that? It's going to, like, we don't normally cover news stuff, but like, E3 is open to the public this year, and they're going on sale. I mean, well, it will have already gone on sale as this is coming out, but we're recording this on a Thursday, so Monday is when they're going on sale. I'm going to try to get one just because, like, I miss E3, even though I feel that opening it up to the public is going to make it even a bigger cluster than it already is. But I would imagine it's also going to be a much different type of show if they're expecting the public to be there, because the last time I went, it was basically nothing was playable because you just waited in line for an hour to watch the developers play it for 20 minutes and then you walked out. But I'd imagine this time they're basically trying to keep E3 relevant. And I think this is a good way to do it. I do think that every gamer should get to experience it at least once. I've already been 4 times, so I don't mind if I don't get in, but I think it'd be really cool if like 1 or 2 of us got to go and, we could record a podcast from the hotel or something. And, but I'm going to try to go in. The ticket's only $150, which is not bad. Because I think if you weren't in the industry and you tried to cause you could, let's see, back in the day, you always had to be in the industry to get into E3. Like that was a given, but you could just get in for free as if you just got the base thing. But if you wanted any of the panels, like that would go up in price like crazy. Like I think it was like $500 or something, like just for like the first level of panels. It got expensive really fast. So $150 and still being able to access the panels, which I've never been to. There was one year where I got in as press and I got to go to like the keynote speech, like the day before E3 started. It was the 10th anniversary of E3, and so that was pretty neat. But that was like the only really like benefit that we got. I think we got a couple press demos, tried out that Shield game that never came out based on the TV series, and a couple other little appointments, but nothing really major. But I'm gonna try to get a ticket. I have a feeling that they will be sold out 3 seconds after the website goes live, but I'm gonna give it a shot.
Yeah, I would love to go. It's just that I have so much going on with school that I'm not sure what's going to be like what I'm going to be doing at that point, or if I'm going to have an internship and stuff like that. So it's like I'm on a moment to moment basis. So I can't think that far ahead, and I'm sure it'll be sold out by then. I really am glad it's happening, and I'll probably go the second or third year, once I've got a little bit more time and money. But it's just good for the industry as a whole. I think it should have been that big from the first place, and it should be like the Consumer Electronics Show basically for video games. There should be a lot more of the industry like trying to get as many people to play hands-on as possible, because if it becomes like the destination for everybody to journey to once a year, it'll like make the whole community just that much bigger and greater.
Yeah, and I think it's probably a response to the waning of video game coverage, because like the websites and the magazines are kind of being supplanted by YouTubers and stuff like that. So this way, like every YouTuber can have a chance to get in, even like the ones that are very small, or just starting out their channels. So like all of a sudden you're going to have a flood of probably more positive impressions on your game than someone that's been in the media for 10 years, because they've seen it all, and they're also not super excited to be there for the first time. They're actually kind of dreading it. With good reason, because E3 is extremely exhausting. But yeah, so I think it's a needed step. Keep in mind that like some of the bigger companies have pulled out of E3, like EA, and Bethesda doesn't actually show anything publicly at E3 anymore. And I think Activision also, like, they've kind of pulled off of the show floor and stuff. So there's not as much to see, but But this is going to be the first one where they announce Metroid in a really long time, so you should go. Not going to happen. I would love that to happen, but it's not going to happen.
I feel like Nintendo's not done with their big announcements this year, and I don't know what it'll be, but I think it's going to be like at least one on that level.
I think we're going to get like some new IP, and we'll probably get. I would bet more on a new Advance Wars than I would a new Metroid. Because Japan never liked Metroid. Metroid Prime 2 and 3 didn't really sell well, and Metroid Other M was like a complete failure. Mm-hmm. So they don't really have a lot of reason. There's multiple reasons that they have to not release another Metroid game, where Advance Wars always did well, and it's been long enough where people are like, getting really nostalgic for Advance Wars. Honestly, like, I thought that after the last Fire Emblem that they would have done Advance Wars next because it's the same development team, but they're trying their best to make Fire Emblem a yearly release, and I think that's a mistake. I think Fire Emblem needs to have like a nice, like, 3-year cycle to breathe, because they released 3 Fire Emblem games at the same time this last time.
Yeah.
That's good. I still haven't played the other 2. I only played the first one, so I'm good on Fire Emblem for a while, guys.
There's a free-to-play one that just came out as well, where somebody spent
Yeah.
over $1,000 and still didn't get the hardest to find character, Hector.
Yeah, I've spent about $20-something on Tap Titans 2 already, and I'm good. Like,
Yeah, I played the beginning of this new Fire Emblem one on the iOS, and it was like, I started the game, and then it said, you need to download another file in order to play this game, and didn't give me a way to exit out. So I had to download it when I didn't even have any data, and then, I played the first battle, and then after the first battle, there's an even bigger download. It's like 200 megabytes. I'm like, whoa, this is going to eat up the entire data of mine. So I just closed it because I couldn't even go any farther while I was out. But I guess that doesn't happen the whole time. My friend said that stopped happening to him so much after the first few battles, but it was unexpected, and I already downloaded it and I was out. So I don't know. They're still working out the kinks for stuff like that. But I think Advance Wars I'm really nostalgic for. I'm hoping for, a Golden Sun or something like that. I think Reggie made some sort of comment when someone asked about Metroid where he's like, we're not done with it, don't worry. That made me think they're going to show something this year. Because there was Metroid Federation Force, wasn't there? That's sort of a more multiplayer, barely Metroid thing. I just think they really need that first party Halo / Killzone. Killzone really sucks, but at least Sony tries to have that first person shooter that's a Halo-esque exclusive, and the IP is there. They just have to make the gameplay the way that people want to flock to.
One, Federation Force was just a thumb in the eye of every Metroid fan, but really I think they missed their window, because what they should have done, and there's no reason they can't still, after Legend of Zelda Link Between Worlds came out, I don't understand why they didn't do a Metroid game just like that, where it was a 3D but 2D perspective game, but then they play with the 3D slider stuff really well, because Link Between Worlds is one of the only games on the 3DS that I play in 3D the whole time, because it makes you feel like you're looking down into a world instead of them trying to push stuff into your eyes. And they could have done some really cool parallax stuff with Metroid, where it's you're just seeing into the environment, and just make it the sequel to Super Metroid, or I guess some sequel to Metroid Fusion. That's still where we're at, as far as the storyline goes. I think that's the no-brainer. I think them trying to go for the fences with a really big shooter. Metroid Prime has a lot of fans and it's nostalgic and stuff, but again, it's one of those things where it's that first game sold pretty well and those other games didn't.
Yeah, it was so slow paced, I thought, for me as a shooter. I know it was supposed to be, but when people play shooters, they don't want to open doors all the time, or I guess there's maybe a little bit too much exploration for a first person shooter. They should have made it third person, like you said, if they want to go that route. But there's so many different ways that they can they need a big female character like that who's at the forefront of their franchises, and she's got the cool mech armor suit type thing that everybody loves in Iron Man. So I don't understand what's going wrong there.
Oh, you're preaching to the choir, my friend. It's it's just for business reasons, there's so much against that series. And again, one of the big things is Japan never liked it. Mm-hmm. It does not have a fan base in Japan, including the dev team. It was made by Gunpei Yokoi, who was disgraced in Nintendo. So that's one of those Japanese things where it's even though the poor guy's dead and left the company before he died, it's still tainted in that way. And that's why they let Retro do it, because they're here, Americans, you take this thing and do stuff with it, and they made a fantastic trio of games, but Nintendo was kind of yeah, we don't want to do it. Mm-hmm. Team Ninja, here, you take it. Do something bad with it.
Mistakes were made.
I need to play that game all the way through. I didn't think it really seemed that bad, other than dumb story stuff, but I think the gameplay was fine.
Mechanically, it seems all right. It just seems like maybe they shouldn't have talked ever.
Right. Which is a shame because I think Nintendo games need to have voice acting. It's just they need to have good voice acting.
It's like this, they don't.
No, I know. That's why I said that, like, I want Insomniac to do a Mario game because, I think that amount of cutscene is all I need from a Mario game. Like, just give me a little bit of fun banter between Mario and Luigi between levels. It doesn't have to be like Shakespeare. I just need there to be a little bit more personality than, no.
Okie dokie.
I kind of sounded like Mickey Mouse sometimes, but it's kind of the same thing.
Well, all right then, Manny. Mickey, whoa.
Insert pasta joke here.
Oh!
All right.
That was awesome.
Oh, that.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have anything before we move on?
Well, we were just talking shooters, and I obviously was playing Overwatch little by little every day because I get my win of the day, and I just wanted to say for a cautionary tale for anybody who's getting into it, when you unplug, you probably will do better, but everybody's going to start to bash you because you're the one who's not talking. Like, if there's like 2 or 3 people on the mic, I found, like, they'll be sucking it up, man, but they'll get so toxic so fast if they see one little thing, because you don't see the whole match when you're playing. But like today, 2 different times I had like the most damage I'd ever done, and I was like carrying the team. I thought like less than halfway through the match I had over 11,000 in damage, and on the console that's pretty good. I've seen some pros on PC get like 50k with a Soldier, but like first of all, I want to say watch videos like that before you start playing Overwatch, because it'll show you the spacing, and the spacing is like so important. I became so much better with Soldier, but like I was playing Soldier and I had done 11k in damage, and then the Lucio on our team goes, "Guys, we just don't have any DPS, man. We just need to be doing DPS." And I'm like, oh my God, this is seriously the best game I've ever played as a damage person. They're still bashing me. And we almost lost, but like I ended up with 6,000 more damage than I'd ever done before in the game, and I was like, oh my God, I did like 27,000 something damage, and they were still saying, like, because I wasn't talking, and I'm usually like a leader and I'm very vocal if I have like the mic in, but I also realized that I get like pretty angry like that quickly, and I wanted to see what would happen if I'd stop talking and just let people go. And I found that like if you just like let people go a lot, like even if they're toxic, like that won't work that match, but like in the long run, you just let people do their thing. And if I can get a little bit of a balance between those two things, it'd be great. But I went up literally 500 points and I'm in the 2700s now. I was like dropping all the way down to 2200, and like I felt like I was in gold, and I was like, I should be in diamond, I should be in grandmaster or whatever. And like it just, as soon as I stopped talking, watched a couple videos, I went up so fast, and I continue to go up so fast. It's hilarious. Now a lot of the people are friending me without me even talking, and they're going, you guys got to play with this kid because like he's actually really good. I don't know like who he is or anything, but like he's just like, we've been winning like a lot. And like I went on a 12 to 15 game win streak as soon as I stopped talking, and I was like, this game is supposed to be better when you talk, but it's gotten so toxic that like people stop for playing the game and they just start talking about who's doing bad at some points.
Seems like it's better, like you will do better if you talk, but if you have like a team that you're used to rolling with, or people that like I said, like I wasn't on mic, but like having that one game where I was where the other 2 people were talking and kind of giving me like advice or kind of strategizing between rounds, I was like, okay, I'm starting to figure out how this game, works now. And then, sure enough, yeah, if you watch YouTube videos, like that helps a lot, because like I kind of didn't realize like where Soldier is the most effective, and the fact that like he has a certain spread and it like falls off after 3 shots. Well, that, but also, like, his distance, like, the damage goes down really fast.
Yeah.
As you get further away. Same thing with Diva, where, if you can get close in, like her clusters do pretty well, but, and that's why, because I didn't understand that. I was like, sometimes I kill these guys, like, really fast, and other times, like, I'm unloading into them, and then I just get annihilated. I don't know why, and finally understood. So maybe that's why I didn't understand Halo multiplayer also, because I would definitely feel like it's like, alright, we both landed in front of each other at the same time, we're both shooting at each other, why am I dead? And like, then he apparently took no damage, and it's like, oh, well, maybe it's because the weapon I'm using versus the weapon he's using, and whatever. But
I mean, I could explain the Halo thing, but that's not going to help you now.
right.
Yeah, I found it so funny that like I took away the most integral part to like that game, and I started doing better because I usually solo queue at the beginning at least, and like within the first couple games, someone picks me up, and then we have a group, and then we start talking. But it was just funny that this way I'm at the highest I've ever been, and it's like unbelievable that I'm doing it with like characters, like all the different characters, but I'll be like Torb or something, and like we'll win on Eichenwald on defense. You just have to know like exactly when to use like the right kit, and got to be able to switch quickly. And if people tell you something like, hey, would you please switch to this character? That's like great and positive and stuff. But a lot of people just be like, oh, we got this useless fucking soldier. What the fuck, man? I can't believe it. Now he's switching to a healer. What, a useless healer too? Like I really heard that today, and I was like, are you kidding? And then like the guy became soldier. He died. We lost right after he died. Everyone else is still alive. And he's like, yeah, that fucking healer, man. And he's the only one with an X on his name. It's like, man, do you hear yourself? You just need to unplug and think about it for a little while. If you do that, just like if you're in a sport and you get hurt, sometimes it's better to watch things on the side for a little bit to get that other perspective and realize like you've lost it in the game.
Yeah. I've been watching, for some reason, a lot of Street Fighter V videos, and have come to realize that I hate the Street Fighter V community. Like, the people who are at the top of the heap in that game and stuff, like, are just the worst people. and it's like, they can never accept that. It's never like a mutual, like, oh, you know what, that was a really good match, or like, oh, I messed up there. It's nobody ever wants to take responsibility for if they lose. It's always like, oh, this guy's a fucking scrub. Oh, I can't believe I'm losing to this guy, blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, if he's that terrible, why did you just get annihilated like 2-zip? Like, what, like, just to either admit that he's better than you, or admit that, like, you didn't handle that matchup very well. Like, I don't understand why you can't make that thing. Like, I don't know why I keep going back and watching. I think it's just because I've watched enough on YouTube where they keep popping up, and I'm like, all right, let me watch this shit. And then I get like 3 minutes into it, like, yeah, that's okay. I'm done. Like, I can't do this anymore.
That game weighs on my shoulders more than like any other game, because I've got the controller, and I bought the season 2 pass and stuff. But every time I get into it, I just get totally beat down. I'm like, I can tell I'm like a frame late, or I just don't know like when, like what attacks are invulnerable when and stuff like that. But it's so hard when it's just like one person fighting off against another. It just, like, I'll hit the button and I feel like I should do the combo there, but like it's not quite there, or, I'm just a little bit off, and I can't spend that time in training for hours until I finally hit exactly the right like rhythm with the bread and butter combo. And then when you watch those people, you're right, they're like shitting all over people that are way better than me, and I'm like, oh my god, I got to get out of this community.
Yeah. And we better get on to Chrono Crossing, because we're losing Angelo. It's getting a little late. So let's cue that music, guys. We're Chrono Crossing back to 2001, and turns out this was a really, really good year for games. You go down this list and you're like, this was the year when franchises were born. But real quick, I asked the guys to do a little homework assignment. I wanted them to each count all the games that came out in 2001 they played, either when it came out or since then, because obviously we all go back and play older stuff. But I'm really curious, because the reason being is that 2001 is like my heyday. This is when I was just consuming video games on an ungodly level because of working at Game Fellas, and just, working through games very quickly. So I just kind of wanted to compare, because it could be that we're all very close, but I kind of have a feeling that we're not. So, Angelo, how many games did you play in 2001, or from 2001?
I think I played 34.
Okay.
Is that about what you figured?
It's actually a little bit more than I figured.
Okay.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
I had more free time in 2001, as it turns out.
Patrick?
I feel like you're gonna think it's like fake or something when I say this, but I really tried to narrow it down. It's just like I had so many friends that I was playing a game like one time with, or like I like had like Blockbuster every 5 days. My mom let me get like one game a week because I was an only child and stuff. So I had 74.
Oh, wow. I had 75.
Really?
Yeah, so I'm impressed.
Wow.
Because I thought for sure that I was going to blow both of you away. I thought like y'all were both going to have like around 20 something.
Yeah. See, I had all the sports games too, though, and I'm like, I know I played them all that year. That like my friends had the sports games that year, and I also played like random little shit like Bloody Roar 3. Like, I can't believe I rented that game, but I played it for 5 days. Like,
yeah, Bloody Roar is good. No, that's interesting. I think maybe we'll try to add that to Chrono Crossing, because at least for the next few years, because this is where we're getting. I just want to see where I'm at compared to y'all, because you know I always say that I've played a lot more games than most people, but I could be wrong. Maybe that's not the case. But
this year was like so good, though. I saw myself playing games like that happened this year, like 2 and 3 years after. Still, like,
oh yeah. I mean, this is the year that like the Xbox launched. This is the year the GameCube launched. I believe this is the year that the Game Boy, the GBA launched this year too. Yeah. So that was a lot of stuff. And then the Dreamcast was still new, and PS2. I mean, this is the year the PS2 was coming into its own. Like, you look at this list, and it's amazing. Like the games that were on here. So, who wants to go first for their top game of 2001?
Oh, I'm not sure.
I got mine. Mine was pretty easy.
Okay, what was yours, Angelo?
Halo.
I thought it was going to be. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not much of an SPS guy, but there was another one. It changed the game when it came out. It really did. I mean, yeah, it slowed things down, but it was a really solid. It was the first console shooter I got into. I mean, everybody played GoldenEye, whatever. I never really got into GoldenEye. I was playing PC shooters then. But this is the first time I was like lugging my gigantic Xbox over to people's houses.
Yeah.
That's what you did.
Right.
There were so many LAN parties. Yeah.
Yep. LAN parties were a thing. Like, I seriously remember a friend of mine had like 3 TVs in his closet, and we'd get them, and I'd put them one on the dining room table. On the dining room table, a friend of mine would put one on like the coffee table, and he'd use just the one right there, and we'd all be playing Halo and like yelling at each other and stuff and having a good time.
Yeah.
See, we had the benefit of Game Fellas, so like after hours, we already had one Xbox set up. Then we would have a used one, and then Corey would bring in his, and I think his brother brought in his. So we had him right there playing after hours. Now, I didn't really play. I think I played a couple times at the store like that, and I was at least one party where they were all playing. I was just watching. I was like, this is when I first saw that like you can snipe people with a pistol. That doesn't make any damn sense, but that was the thing, right? Like, you know, it's really cool. I wish that I could have gotten in on all of that stuff. It's sort of like how I feel about like the original Tony Hawk, where, I think I've said it on the show before, where everybody was having so much fun with Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, and I could not play that game to save my life, and it was so frustrating. I just couldn't do it. And so when Tony Hawk 2 came out, I was bound and determined to get good at that game, and so I bought that and just played the hell out of it. I never got great at it, but I got way better. You know, I could actually do stuff in that game, and I got decent combos, but then, like, one of the other guys at the store would just, like, blow me away with, like, combos into multiple millions, and I was like, oh, okay, that I'm doing something wrong.
Oh, that was a good moment for both of those games. I played the Tony Hawk series like a shit ton, and I would have like really, really long combos where you just grind like one rail that would go all around and around, and then you would like jump off and do a manual, go up and do like your 900 or something if you could still have enough momentum. But there were, you know, so many tricks to gathering your momentum again after doing like, you know, 24 different tricks in a row, and it was like that made me want to play, or made me want to skateboard in real life. I got a skateboard, you know, I could never really ollie, but I'm still convinced that like you can't really ollie, and other people like are just computer generated things, because like every time I push down against the back of a skateboard, only the front goes up. Like, I don't know, and I hit the front of it too hard then, and then the front goes down, and then the back's up, you know, but Tony Hawk made me live out all my fantasies before I even knew what they were. Although, Angelo, I was really, really close to picking an Xbox game for my number one with that Halo, and I still want to do it. It's just like that you already picked it, and I'm really glad you did, so I don't really have to anymore to make that statement. Because I used to go to the LAN parties all the time. You know, my friend who was like really rich had 2 TVs set up all the time, so there could be 8 of us at any time. But I was at one party where it was 16 people in the basement, and kids were underage drinking, and it was absolutely nuts. And I was like, oh my God, Blood Gulch is the best map ever in the history of first-person shooters. I can't believe like nobody ever made this map before. Yeah, it's like when you see that map, it's basically nothing. You know, there's just 2 bases on the either side, a couple things on the left and the right that you can like go into caves with, but like it's very wide open. You know, but like everybody has an ample opportunity. It's completely balanced, especially for like capture the flag. It's great. And it's hilarious when people are like camping the teleport place, or are trying to at least. But I had a friend who got like 40 kills one time just camping this, where they teleport to. And it was like, I've never seen someone wreck so hard. I've never wanted to be so good against other people as I did like during that time. And I didn't feel that itch again for a really, really long time, mostly because I think I didn't have Xbox, and that was the best for multiplayer shooters. But it also had like the best maps, and like that was where it all started. But that was not my number one. My number one's Metal Gear Solid 2.
I was going to be very shocked if it wasn't Metal Gear Solid 2. I was going to seriously question your commitment to Metal Gear Solid if you didn't pick it.
Yeah, I mean, it has to be, because I literally stayed home from school to finish that game one day, and that doesn't happen very often. That, like, and it opened up my mind completely to, like, a lot of ideas about, like, secret societies and what government is, and, like, what even, like, a video game can do as far as, like, a story, and, like, how shocking it was that you didn't even get to play Snake the entire time. Like, I hate Raiden. Still.
Man, I thought that was so genius. Like, and the fact that they kept it under wraps. Mm-hmm. Like, I remember EGM actually held their review like a full month because they felt that they couldn't talk about the game without talking about that, and they wanted to give it a month to let people play it and everything, and also, I guess, to get away from the NDA. The NDA. And, yeah, like, I thought that was a stroke of brilliance. The only bad part about the Raiden thing is that there's a very clear moment towards the end where you should assume control of Snake again, and you don't. That was my big problem with it. It's like, this is a perfect place to go back to Snake, and they just drop it.
But he's Pliskin, he's not Snake.
Yeah, but I mean, you should still, like, that should be the big reveal and everything, and then I think they do reveal it, don't they? I know, it's been so long.
I don't quite remember, but I can just remember, like, fighting Fat Man and stuff like that, and just the entire closing cinematic is, people say it's too long, but it's one of the best I think I've ever seen, and one of the most eye-opening for me. It was a perfect time when I was barely in high school, didn't know about that shit yet, and there couldn't have been a better way for me to really feel the weight of a secret society coming down on me, rather than playing through an entire game as like a military soldier and then realizing like what you'd done and all that. It's, I don't know if it even has been surpassed yet.
and then the part where Colonel Campbell like goes crazy and you realize that it's a simulation. Like, I literally thought that I was losing my mind because I was like, what? Because it was late at night when I got to that part, and I was by myself, and it's in the dark and everything, and it's probably like 2 or 3 in the morning when I'm playing this. I'm like, what is going on? Like, am I dreaming right now? Is this not actually me playing the game? Like, what is this? And then when I realized that was supposed to happen, I was like, oh, okay. I thought this was like some sort of weird demonic glitch.
Yeah, those kind of what the fuck moments make me pick that over Halo.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I'm there with you. Halo
was
too.
Really weird, but not that kind of weird.
Well, my pick is probably going to be weird to you guys, and so usually when I do Chrono Crossing, it's either like the game that stuck with me the most, or it's the game that I've revisited, since. But a lot of times, like, especially when we're getting into this era, like, I don't go back and play these games because in this time period, I'm finishing a game and I'm trading it in and instantly and moving on to the next thing and never looking back. And that's true for probably going back now until we get to the Super Nintendo era, because that's where I was a kid and I was just replaying stuff over and over. But this game, like, I have not touched it since it was new and hot, but the memories from it are so indelible to me. And it's also like, it was kind of a dark horse because it's my only time to really talk about anything from this system. Frickin' Phantasy Star Online for Dreamcast.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yep.
Everything about that game. Like, the presentation, the music, the graphical style, the fact that I created a 3-foot tall ranger with a gun as big as he was like so super cool. You're feeding your mags was so neat, and also just, that was my first time playing anything online. So there at one point I remember playing with my boss Ben from Game Fellas, and then our web designer Q, who was in San Antonio, and then friend of the show John Golston was actually at Q's house, and he was the one manning the keyboard. So like Q would say something to John, and then John would type it out. Because this was like so early, like we weren't used to like having a controller and then like typing on a keyboard. Right. So I've actually still got a Dreamcast keyboard around here somewhere. But yeah, it's a really cool game. And, they released other Phantasy Star games in the same vein for like Vita, or not Vita, like PSP and stuff like that. And then there was like Phantasy Star Universe, but none of them interested me in the way that Phantasy Star Online did. And I didn't even play like the sequel on the Dreamcast. I only played the first one, but I put tons of hours into that thing, and it was such a special time.
The people who played that absolutely loved it so much that they were even playing that like 10 years later after there was nothing else going on with the Dreamcast. Like, I was in college.
Oh, there's still people playing it.
I was in college, and I was like, no one ever plays the Dreamcast. I was about to graduate my last year, like 2010. And I met this girl on the same floor as me who was still playing it. And she like doesn't play really any other game like that, but she's like, I need my Dreamcast here so I can keep playing Phantasy Star. Check it out.
Yeah.
That was like also the first big girl gamer that I met, and I was like, whoa, first of all. And like, but like she was like so hardcore. That girl was cool.
Man, back then they were super rare. Like,
see, I had cousins that were girls that played video games. I played Double Dribble with my cousins that were girls. We traded games back and forth.
Man, like, up until I started working at Game Fellas, like, the owner of Game Fellas, Teresa, was the first woman that I met who played video games. And then there were maybe 2 or 3 females, like, some of them were girls, some of them were like old, like young women that would come into the store on a regular basis, but they were few and far between, man.
Yeah, it wasn't until like the 3DS days or the DS days when like girls had their own like portable systems that they would really get into it, or like iPhones and stuff. Like, I think that's like a really good introduction for a lot of people who are casual gamers. I shouldn't just say girls, but like it was able to ease people in better than like these big bulky home consoles. So it was like crazy to see. Yeah, she brought her own home console. Not just that, she also had an Xbox. Like, she brought both of them to college, and I was like, dang. And like, the 3 of you girls just all play that. Like, I see you, Hallie. I still remember you.
I was born like 10 years too early because, literally like women 10 years younger than me, like, yeah, they were and are hardcore gamers. And like, that was not something that I ever saw, growing up. Like, anybody, like even guys my age, like after the Super Nintendo, like I really didn't know very many people that were still into games as much as I was. So it was just, back then, like it was very much still like this, like, kid thing. And you weren't into this after a certain age. And it sucked.
There was a lot of that. Like, I think my parents still think I'm pretty weird because as an adult I play games and I'm like, look, let me explain to you the plot for Nier. You will understand that this is not a game for children. I worked it in again.
I know. I was like, I can't believe that wasn't in your top 3.
I don't want to talk about it too much, but that Nier Automata demo, that's some pretty good stuff. Some pretty good stuff.
The original game doesn't play that well. I don't know if you got a chance to crack that open yet, and it is kind of ugly, but I'm really hoping that this game has like that kind of a like just absolutely nutso story.
Yeah. And it seems to be produced by the good Platinum team. So that's encouraging. You know, you gotta watch it these days with that company.
There's clearly an A team, a B team, and maybe a C team.
It's more like a D team.
I mean, you look and like,
Yeah, the D team is the one that handled the Turtles game.
that is the worst game ever, maybe, except for like Pac-Man 3D World for 3DS or whatever. It's just,
Well, real quick, moving on to our comments at Pixelbit. Michael117, no brainer here because of his name. It's Halo 1. He says, I love the campaign, and my friends and I played a bunch of the split-screen multiplayer together. Halo came in hot with a weird space opera, a distinct art style, great music, and you played it with 2 thumbsticks. My friends and I literally never played anything like it before. So, kind of expected that one.
2 thumbs.
Fire in the Hole says, he says the honorable mention is Halo, you know, but Metal Gear Solid 2, Sons of Liberty is definitely my pick. As I mentioned before, the series is my favorite in gaming, and this is tied for my favorite in the series. Mine are 4 and 3. He says, my brother and I, each bought our own copies, and, cause we wanted to play the game so badly. I probably put 30 hours into the demo that came with Zone of the Enders, which also came out the same year. And I'm one of those people who bought Zone of the Enders and first popped in that Metal Gear demo. Then I played Zone of the Enders, and 4 hours later I was done.
Yeah.
That's still a great game though. I was looking at the intro to possibly pick, and that intro doesn't hold up too well, but the music sure does. Yeah, Zone of the Enders.
Oh yeah. I still have to play through the second one. I bought it for like with that HD re-release, and then I got through to one part in the first one where I couldn't I didn't save. It doesn't save automatically, and I lost like 4 hours worth of progress, and I was like, nope, that's it for that game. And then I just didn't move on to the second one again. But it's so cool how the art style is so much different than the first one, you know?
Mm-hmm. I like the second one because one of the characters mechs is named the Vic Viper, and you've got to be a specific type of Konami fan to get that.
I get that.
Yeah, that's some good stuff. Darth Hader says Halo Combat Evolved, the multiplayer for obvious reason, and my first LAN experience was also the reason to get me into first-person shooters. So that's seeing a theme here. Xrian's got okay. Thank you, Xrian. He always has the interesting choices.
Yeah.
This was a close one too. Devil May Cry, definitely my choice here. I had never played a game like it. The combat in Dante were so awesome. Bosses were memorable. I still love that spider boss.
Crazy.
Another contender for great opening. Yeah.
I was playing poker a lot at the time, and I remember like going over to like this one house where there was like these 3 kids who like weren't playing poker, and they would only play the Devil May Cries, and they were trying to like set records and like beat each other, like getting like the most points or like the highest rankings for like the hardest levels. And I was like, dang, I didn't know that game was like that, but like they were so into it that was how it was for them. And it was so cool that they had formed that tight-knit 3-person community, and they played a lot of the first and the third one like that.
Apparently that's a thing that I had no idea happened until DMC was coming out, because people were so angry because apparently there's like Devil May Cry frame counters out there. Like people like it's got kind of like a fighting game style community around it where people were like I remember like playing the demo for DMC and thinking it was really good, and then I saw comments like, yeah, well you can do infinite combos and blah blah blah, and it's like, okay, so like you know, I thought the whole point of these games is to do flashy stuff and not, you know, but yeah, like because you couldn't do like hardcore stuff like in DMC 3, like, you know, they just weren't having it. And to me, like, I haven't played it all the way through, but that last game is really good to me. Like, I like everything about that game.
Yeah, I actually played through the whole DMC, like Devil May Cry, and then I actually played through it a second time too, because I liked the level design, and I liked how I felt like so powerful, like with those type of infinite combos. So what if they're infinite? Because the other ones I could never string together a big enough combo. Right.
I can't even beat the first boss in Devil May Cry 3. That game is too hard for me. Lastly, over Pixelbit, Catherine says, Final Fantasy X. Thank you, because I really wanted to say Final Fantasy X, but I'm never going to be able to say anything for the Dreamcast, because I know it, because it's basically 99 and 2000, and then we're done. And, like, I don't think there's anything in those 2 years for me for Dreamcast. I could be wrong, but probably not. She says, I was working at Toys R Us when this came out, and those of us who worked in the video game department counted the days down until we could grab our copies. We could not wait to see what the PS2 could bring to Final Fantasy, and I, at least, was not disappointed. And she gives a special shout out to Final Fantasy Chronicles as well. That's one, Patrick, that's where you played Chrono Trigger for the first time.
Yeah. I didn't think I could pick that, though, because technically they didn't come out that year, so...
Well, yeah. She was just trying to give it a special mention, but yeah, technically it would not count because of it being a re-release. Over at Twitter, JD, at a myth known as JD, says Mega Man Battle Network, which I've talked to him about that before.
Yeah.
Casey at Officer Meeseeks says Halo. Even though I like 2 and 3 more, I can still have just as much fun with the original. And Bob over at BG Bronson says Baldur's Gate on the PC.
Oh, great.
So that I actually wasn't expecting that from him. I figured for sure it would be Halo. So that's cool.
Baldur's Gate's my number one game that I've wanted to play so many times and tried to play so many times. Even like now that it's co-op, I tried to play it with people and I keep mentioning it like, hey, we should really play this classic. Like we all love RPGs and like we all have talked about that game before. And that was a game where like I couldn't buy it originally. I was too young or something. And like that cover is like the coolest looking cover. That and the second one on Throne of Ball, they were always like tantalizing in the Best Buy. It was something that I really to this day wish that I had played through it. I'm so glad someone mentioned it because I've seen the intros that are also like among people's top of all time when they talk about Baldur's Gate, or I think it's the second one that they really like. The whole lore and everything behind it, as well as just the way that the magic spells looked at the time, I feel like were second to none. And I only saw a little bit of it, especially the stuff on like the back of the box that I looked over and over at. But it was the presentation, I think, was hard to beat.
There was a similar game that came out that year that it's the exact same story. It was called Arcanum. A friend of mine had that. I don't know if you guys know that. It's like Arcanum of Steamworks and Magic Obscura. I had to look it up to make sure I got the whole thing right.
Yep.
Because that's a weird name. It's like that, but it's steampunk. And I mean, yeah, I know. That works for me. I don't know. I haven't gotten sick of it yet. I probably should by now, but I'm not. But that's like a theme I still really like. And I just wanted to get into that game, and I just couldn't do it. It's the same thing. It's this impenetrable sort of D&D system that if you don't specifically grow up or know somebody who can show you exactly how it works and kind of like teach you how to play these games, you're just going to flail around miserably, especially if you're like me and all you've played is JRPGs, because you cannot play like JRPGs.
Right.
That's my thing, is that is an era that I was not around for, and it's impenetrable to me. Like I've reviewed games for Pixelbit that are throwbacks to the Baldur's Gate style and given them bad reviews because they bored me to tears and I could not figure out what to do with them and just did not like them. Like now, modern game, like I love Divinity 2, but I think it has a lot of modern sensibilities, but I don't think that I can go back. Because even with those like remasters of Baldur's Gate that they did for like iOS and PC, like I just don't think I can do it. I'd love to, because I hear people talk about those characters so much, and I would love to experience it, but I just don't think I can do it. So
yeah, I think
I'll play newer games like it. You know, like I said, like I still want to finish Divinity 2 and Divinity Original Sin, because they just released Divinity Original Sin 2 on the PC, and I think that's coming to consoles like this year.
Yeah.
So
I'm only halfway through that game, and it's just so expansive. I almost feel like I've gotten enough out of it because there's so much content, and you have to be so good at it. Like I still have a good character in it, but it's only streamlined it just enough where I can get through it. Those old ones, I failed so hard, and I failed at the easier versions of those games, like Icewind Dale. I didn't even like create the right amount of characters when I went through it, and it didn't tell me like that I needed like another character in my party, that you like have to like create someone else besides yourself. And so like I got through like 5 or 10 hours of the game as a child, and then all of a sudden I couldn't beat the rest of it because I didn't have a full party. I remember I was like, why did this not tell me that I needed to pick something else up or like make another person? Maybe I was just really stupid at that point, which I was. But
it was probably in the giant tome of an instruction manual that came with it that you probably didn't read, because PC games back then were like, here's the Bible for this game. You know it.
The strategy guide for Baldur's Gate was, I kid you not, 200 pages thick at least, and it was one very specific way to play through that game, because there's so many different deviations and weird things you can do in that game that they can't possibly explain everything.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I think I just need to watch a Let's Play.
Yeah. You know, like, we're gonna wrap up, but I feel bad because now there's no way to talk about it, but none of us ever picked a Grand Theft Auto game for any year of Chrono Crossing, because this is the year that GTA 3 came out. And it's like, you know, like, those games were so important, but I don't think they hold up well, because like I looked up Vice City for the intro for, you know, as a possible candidate for stage select, and it looks bad. Like, they look like their hands look like puppet hands, you know, and it's like, I remember that game looking so much better, and it's like they've aged so poorly, but they're so important to the game industry. And I think we had, like, I know the three of us never picked any of them, but and we had like one person pick Vice City, and nobody else did. I don't know if it's because people forget about them, or if it's just because like they revisit them and like, oh, you know, this isn't as cool as I remember it being. But you know, I feel bad that we never picked any of them.
Yeah, I was actually like too young during the time. I couldn't even
Yeah.
legally buy it, and my mom wouldn't let me get it. So I only got to play it at someone else's house sometimes. And whenever we did, the person would just like turn all the guns on and like just start shooting people. And I didn't even know there was a storyline for a really long time. I'm like, why do people like this? This isn't why I play games. Like, I guess I was a little too mature for that.
The thing is, like, Grand Theft Auto 3 is a decent sandbox by today's standards. It was an amazing sandbox back then because nobody had seen anything like that, but I had also played Morrowind before I played that, which might have had something to do with that, a little more of an open world thing.
Same.
And the missions in both of those games are terrible, I'll be honest with you. Even in Morrowind, the missions are just bad. But in that game, they're especially bad because it makes you use these mechanics that frankly kind of suck.
Right.
You know, it's like, oh, you're expected to snipe this guy, and it's like, this game isn't built for sniping at all.
Yeah.
And that was when I just stopped playing the missions. I was like, these suck. I'm just going to run cars off bridges and do stupid things. So, yeah.
Yeah. I just thought it was worth bringing up because, like, you know, I doubt any of us are going to pick Grand Theft Auto 1 or 2, like, when we get to them, because, like, why? But, yeah, so that's going to do it. Thanks, everybody, for hanging in. I know it was a long one, but that stage select was just too good.
Yeah.
We couldn't cut that off early. Next episode for stage select again, I want your top 3 game consoles of all time. And for Chrono Crossing, we're going to be going back to the year 2000. The year 2000.
Thank you for doing that.
I'll probably try to get the clip to throw into that episode because you got to. But yeah, so if you want to participate in either or both of those segments, hit us up at Twitter at NWPcast or over at pixelbit.com and throw it into the comment section for episode 106. And you can always find us individually on Twitter. Patrick.
I'm at some boss.
Angelo.
I'm at a roguish ham.
And you can find me at Julian_Titus. That's going to do it. For myself, Patrick, and Angelo, thanks for listening, and keep it pantsless, Internet. Goodbye.
That was legend. Wait for it. Dairy.